of the Ordinance Committee to order, this being Tuesday, August 23rd at 6:30. And I'm Counselor Bacon, and with me I have Counselor Jourdain, Counselor Maldonado-Velez, and Counselor Rivera. And Counselor GIVNER has let us know that she will be here, but she is delayed by about 20 minutes or so.
Then I think she said she was calling in.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Or she's gonna come back.
I hope so.
Oh,
Makes
good.
it so much easier.
Good.
But we'll see what develops. Okay, so I am anticipating that we will be joined momentarily by the planning board. I see Chair Panich on Zoom.
Yes, and I have to apologize. I am in semi-permanent quarantine here.
Okay.
So,
I see some of your members coming into the chambers as we speak.
yes, Nathan and Gernander should be there live, and Rosanna is also on Zoom.
Yes, and I see Rosanna. And I see Sharon.
The really important member of the group.
Yes. Okay. So I just would ask for a motion to take up item 1, which is the petition for the street vendor license, if I could have a motion on that.
Motion removed from the table.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 1 is a petition of Yahaira Malero for a street vendor license. She is having some personal issues and is unable to attend tonight.
Make a motion to table it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So the motion passes to table it, and it'll remain tabled for the next agenda. We have our committee and the planning board gathered in a hybrid fashion. Our committee is all here in person, so we do not have to do roll call votes. And so I would like to entertain a motion to take up item 2 and open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So our public hearing, which is a joint hearing with the planning board, continued from April and June and July and March, is a zone change application from DR to BH for Daniel Laflamme at 41 Temple Street, Lot 085-00-012, to operate a truck repair shop in a district zone DR so that the business can be conforming. So our public hearing is open.
Okay, and I would entertain a motion to reopen the public hearing for the planning board to take up the application for a zone change map to DR for BH for 41 Temple Street, parcel 085-00-012, Daniel Laflamme, applicant, and waive the reading of the public hearing notice.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? And Sharon will call the roll.
Nathan?
I have to recuse myself for being on a butter.
Thank you. Rosanna?
Yes, ma'am.
Bernander?
Yes.
And Mimi?
Yes. So we too are open.
Okay, so I'll just give a brief summary, and if Chair Panich would like to also, which I'm sure she will. So we have been through a very complicated path with this application and hearing, and the last big question, at least from my perspective, that remained at the end of the last hearing was the question of the special permit application that had been filed early on, and what the path of decision was relative to that. And the purpose of that was to see what action, if any, had taken place. And so, do I see Attorney Degnan? I don't see Attorney Degnan online yet, but she has given me an update, and Jeffrey has also given me an update in that regard, that special permit application was advertised, the public hearing was held, and in May of, I believe, 2010, the City Council gave that special application leave to withdraw with permission or at request of the applicant. So as far as this committee is concerned, what we have before us to act upon is the current application, by this business person to change the zone as read into the record. So that's the latest update that I have. Chair Panich, if you have other summary that you think should come before the group, before we hear from the applicant again?
No, you actually have more updated information than we have. We saw the papers that were filed at the time, which didn't give us any real clue about the nature of that application. It obviously didn't have anything to do with use. It was for a change to a pre-existing non-conforming structure as opposed to a change that would allow a different use. And we didn't see any documentation that would reflect what had actually happened with it. So the leave to withdraw is new to us, but it certainly doesn't seem to give us any further information that would indicate that there is a path to finding a long-term non-conforming use on this parcel that was authorized at some point by the city's officials.
Right, so I only offered that information because I was briefed on it today by Attorney Degnan, and I don't see her online yet. So when she comes in, she can confirm that if,
Yeah,
So
no,
it's hot off the press.
Yes.
So to the applicant, is there information that you wish to bring forth for consideration by the committee in this public hearing?
Yes, I'm sorry, Attorney Thomas Wilson.
Make sure the mic is on.
Attorney Thomas Wilson representing Daniel Laflamme. The only thing I can add to you was, and I don't know who it was, but somebody on Facebook told me that King Trucking has been there for years. I don't know who sent it to me, but I got an email the other day. So that was there for years. I stand on all the information that we sent. I sent to you, I believe, a copy of something from the assessor's office saying that this building was built in 1955. And it seems that if you look at the city directories, that King Trucking was there doing exactly what this gentleman's been doing. So, and I think we've discussed that, and I think that's where we are right now. That this, and also that our, that the zone change, this gentleman has been accused of doing different things from different people, but really he's just there. He doesn't even do oil changes. He just does slight little repairs. And as you've also heard, he is not a detriment to the neighborhood. On the other hand, he is an addition to the neighborhood, helping snow plow, fixed up a house. So, and other people, save one, have said that he has been helpful. And I don't think that this zone change will be a detriment. I think it would actually, if you really want to know, and it's probably the status quo that's been going on. So,
Okay.
and that's, I guess, unless you want to say something else, but I guess that's where we are. So we're hoping that you will entertain our request, our plea, our whatever you want to call it, to give him his own change so he can have his business and do everything that he's supposed to be doing,
Okay,
which he can't do without his own change.
okay. Thank you. I'm not seeing any hands. Since we're in the public hearing, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak in favor or in opposition or to ask a question about this zone change request?
I think I just saw Attorney Degnan pop up somewhere.
I'm sorry?
Attorney Degnan just popped up on the screen.
Kathy.
Oh, thank you. I don't see any, I'm just looking for public at this moment. I'm not seeing any members of the public. If anybody is wishing to speak and I'm not seeing you, you may speak. Oh, you're here as a member of the public. Okay, if you could give us your name and address, we will take your,
Yeah, I'm Nathan Chong.
Madam Chair, point of order. A point of order, please.
I'll hear the point of order.
This is a member of the planning board who just recused himself. He's spoken multiple times already prior to being appointed.
Point taken.
For him to be able to speak now, pro or con, is totally a conflict of interest, and I'm amazed he's got the chutzpah to come up to the microphone at this point. He's on the planning board now. There's
Yes.
no chance that we should even hear him at this point, whether or not he can vote on this, Madam Chair.
I hear
Madam
you.
Chair.
I hear you.
Well,
I hear you. I hear you. Okay, so here's where I'm going to rule on this. You have spoken on this matter in the public hearing as a member of the public. You are now a member of the planning board, so your testimony is in the record when you were not a member of the planning board, so we will let that stand as it is. So, thank you. I'm not seeing any other members from the public who wish to speak in favor or in opposition or have a question at this time. I see a member of the planning board that would like to speak. Tony?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I went in the area. I spoke to some neighbors, and I've been seen talking to people and like how he was like struggling as a small business person in Holyoke, as I am, and I talked to a lot of people, and they are like favored for him to change. You know, as behalf of a planning board or as a small business person, I like to speak favor of this zone changing, and I love to see him do more business in Holyoke and future, like what he does sell trucks in Chicopee. And I want to wish him luck. If the zone change, he can do more repair and open other small business, small trucking business in Holyoke, sales, purchase. And I love to see him to come to Holyoke and do some more business. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Panich?
Yeah, this, I suppose, is a point of order. But honestly, I think, I am distressed by these attacks on a member of the public, speaking as a member of the public, obviously, not participating as a planning board member. I think it is inappropriate and as well as unpleasant, and it's sort of an insult to all of us, frankly, to assume that because Nathan is a planning board member, we cannot distinguish what he has to say as a member of the public from what he might have to say if he were able to vote on this, which he is not. He is not. He has taken no part in our deliberations, and, I would like it very much if we could hold these joint hearings without incidents like this taking place. Thank you.
Thank you. I take your point. His position on the matter is a part of public record in the public hearing prior, so he has not been unable to participate. So his participation was assured. But I take your point. Thank you. Is there anyone else who has any questions? Oh, and I want to welcome Councilor GIVNER.
Councilor McGivern does have his hand up, and Kathy Deegan is on.
Oh, thank you. Councilor McGivern. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. It just went up. I appreciate Sharon for seeing that. I just wanted to add 2 points of thoughts. It sounds like we're getting near to the end of the public hearing. It's obvious that through the public hearing, we established that there's a number of neighbors who believe this is not only not detrimental to the neighborhood, but is a benefit to the neighborhood. Therefore, that weighs into the argument of spot zoning and makes it, in most instances, not a spot zone, because it is not only for the applicant alone that a zone change would be granted. But the one thing I would like to add, and I've been trying to verify this before I said it publicly, is my understanding, and it predates my time and it predates zoning, is that the land for which the condos have been built on were previously a junkyard. And if you look at the map, that now connects the former King's Trucking, the parcel land before us this evening, to a commercial use. And then there's commercial use all the way down to Dean Tech as the historic part of this neighborhood. There's no question that the residential neighborhood was established also, but the abutting of the commercial use, it appears to be commercial all the ways down to Dean Tech. And I think that is just something I'd like to see be weighed into the discussion to come after the public hearing is closed.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? I'm not seeing anyone, I'm not hearing anyone. At this point, I think we've received all the information that we need in order to inform us to make a decision in this regard, so I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So the ordinance committee has closed this public hearing effective tonight.
Okay, and I would at this point entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this matter.
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Sharon?
By roll call vote, Rosanna,
Yes, ma'am.
Berninger,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. So we too are closed.
Okay. So I'd like to entertain a motion to take up item 3 and reopen the public hearing.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to remove item number 3 from the table and to open the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 3 is a public hearing jointly held with the Planning Board. Ordered that the City Council review and amend Section 5.4 of the Zoning Ordinance to allow for accessory dwelling units, otherwise known as AUDs, in the
Madam Chair?
DR zone. In addition to amending Section 2 definitions and any other sections that may apply to allow this use in the DR zone. Accessory dwelling unit, ADU, is a smaller independent residential dwelling unit located on the same lot as a standalone, detached, single-family home.
Councilor Bartley has a point.
Yeah, just another point of order, Madam Chair. You closed the public hearing for agenda item 2, but the matter's still before you. So you need to have a motion to vote on it, or you need to table it, or do something with it. So I didn't hear a motion.
No,
So in the case of the public hearing, once we close our public hearing, we have to wait for the recommendation from the planning board for a period of 21 days. And then if that elapses, then we take action if we have not received one. Thank you.
Understood, but don't you need a motion to table?
No, no.
it's sort of automatically tabled.
We have to
We
wait.
now await the planning
And if-
board's determination.
And if we don't hear something, then we put it on the agenda and then we act.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so for item 3, we had a motion to open the public hearing.
Yes, and I believe that passed.
And we're in the public hearing for item 3.
Yep. Now let
Okay.
us,
So, and I too would
Planning
entertain a
board shall
motion
do the
to
same.
reopen the planning board's hearing on the proposed zoning text change or to amend section 5.4 to allow for multiple principal structures, to allow accessory dwelling units under section 2 definitions and relevant sections to allow the use in DR zones.
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Sharon?
By roll call vote, Nathan,
Yes.
Rosanna,
Yes, ma'am.
Berninger,
Yes.
and Mimi.
Yes.
Okay, so on the AUDs, I believe our committee had pretty much deferred to planning in this regard,
Yes.
because
And-
we really have a limit of knowledge. And so we look forward to whatever we may learn tonight.
Well, and we are unfortunately without the planning board member who has spent the most time working on this. My colleague Kate Crookmeyer, who could not be here tonight, has done a great deal of work with Jeff Burkott and came up with a really, I think, very solid draft for the changes. And we sent it along to legal to be put into legal form and transmitted to you all. And I don't think that happened.
I
So,
it's not
do
here.
not see that.
yeah,
Here.
and that will just have been a delay somewhere in the process. So what I would propose is that we simply continue this to the next available date, at which point, with any luck, Kate will be with us. I mean, if we had it before us tonight, I would, do what I could to present it. I think,
Okay.
it is straightforward, it is clear, but I think she did the principal work, and she should have she will give you the best and most efficient presentation of it.
Okay, well, taking that,
What's our date?
our next date for our ordinance committee meeting is September 27th.
I make a motion that we continue this public hearing until September 27th
At 6:30.
at 6:30.
Second.
Is it 27 or 23rd?
27.
7.
7. Thank you.
Yes, city council would normally be first and third, and we're the fourth and sometimes the second.
Okay, so I too would entertain a motion that we continue this public hearing to
Did
the 27th
I think I have to
at,
say all in favor.
oh, I'm sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, aye. And
Sorry.
we'll get a copy of all the documents Mimi's alluding to.
You know, it would be great if we could have those before the meeting.
I have
You
already
should be.
sent them to, I sent them to Kathy
Okay.
about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
All
we
right, so-
approved the,
So if Kathy, if you
Well-
could send that our way. we
Well,
would
so
appreciate
just as a matter of process, it's good for us to have the ideas, okay? Because in the proper order of things, we would have the debate, we would have the discussion, and then we would ask legal to put it in legal form. Once we've sort of created what we see from the information that we bring in. There's no harm in having a draft, but it certainly, we can certainly have the information before there is a legal form. I would just note.
well,
just for the.
thank you. That's helpful for us to know, because we had been operating under the assumption that you really wanted to have it in legal form ahead of having this discussion. So now we know better, and we can certainly transmit you the draft we've got.
Sure, that would be great. Counselor Jordan?
A very minor but point is, I believe it's only the ordinance committee can ask that it be drafted into legal form, but I'm not gonna make an issue out of it, just for future reference.
Okay. All right then. So we're continuing.
Okay, and I believe the planning board's gonna do the same, right? Or they also?
They haven't yet.
Yes. Okay. I think we had a motion to continue and a second.
We did not have a motion.
I make the motion to continue to September 27.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
By roll call vote, Nathan,
Yes.
Rosanna,
Yes, ma'am.
Reminder,
Yes.
and Mimi.
Yes. Thank you very much, and we will see you then.
Okay,
But
thank
get
you.
Documents ahead of that.
Have a good evening.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to remove item number 4 from the table and open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 4 is a public hearing continued from 7/26/22, special permit application for Carefully Curated LLC at 420 Race Street to reutilize the building as a recreational adult use marijuana manufacturing establishment. So in your packets, you have, oh, and hot off the press in my hand tonight, we have the approved letter from our police chief relative to the security plan. It's not this paper, but I do have it. So there were some outstanding questions on this.
I believe there's
yeah?
a pile of them sitting over
Oh,
here
okay.
if
Great.
esteemed counselors would like a copy.
Okay.
There you go.
Trust what we got. Okay, so with Carefully Curated, we had an initial letter from planning with some open questions. Carefully Curated, is somebody from Carefully Curated here tonight? Is somebody on Zoom from Carefully Curated?
I am representing Carefully Curated tonight.
Okay, great. So we did receive your response letter today.
Thank you.
And we didn't receive the acceptance or update from planning relative to the letter that you sent today. But what you could do is run through your responses with us. And then anything that we haven't heard back from planning on, if there are concerns from the committee, we can make those conditions.
Sounds good.
Sure. Not a problem.
Is everything all right? Okay. So if you would just like to run through that letter and the things that were open and give us the answers, yes?
Before he does, I don't see nobody in the planning board and Zoom anymore. Are they?
So that was the last,
That was the last for us?
that
I
was the
thought.
last joint item
Okay.
that I had. I'm sorry.
I was
I'm
like
sorry, I thought-
wondering, are you guys serving dinner for us or what? Thank you. Good night.
All right, well,
See you,
thank
planning
you.
board.
Good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Okay, so on 474 Pleasant, we closed the public hearing, and it is item 5 on our agenda where we will act tonight. Thank you.
See ya.
I'm sorry. This is becoming a rather scattered meeting, so I apologize for that interruption. So if you would like to run through that letter and give us your responses relative to carefully curated, that would be great.
Great. My name is Matthew O'Boyle. I am the president of Lear Architects, Inc. I live at 353 Sunnyside Road in Westfield, Massachusetts. I'll go through these few items. I believe there's about 8 in total. I believe most of them are relatively minor, and they've been suitably addressed in this response letter. The first outstanding item was a request or a notification that the Holyoke police chief letter will be required before admittance of a special permit, which, as you have noted, that was submitted today, approximately 4 p.m. this afternoon. The second item was a photometric plan was not submitted. That has been submitted in this attachment from this letter. The only addition of exterior lighting for this project is a single exterior mounted dark sky approved wall pack for safety during egress at night.
And that's in the packet that we have.
Correct. Yes, that's the first attachment. The third item, the planning board requested some highlighting of the exterior facade where the tenant frontage is. That is also in that packet. The figures 2 and 3 have been updated to reflect the extent of the leased area of the proposed MME. The fourth item was a request for a details sheet. So more often than not, on a special permit application, we have a sheet of details that show in highlighted information for exterior site improvements. Due to the limited scope of exterior site improvements for this project, we do not have a detail sheet. If the planning board has any specific details that they would like us to include, we can still include that. Typically, you'd see parking striping, bollards, any kind of site improvements, maybe a fence detail, but we're not proposing any exterior improvements other than that single light. So there's really not much detail to provide. There's another note to include a revision list if there are revisions to the special permit application, which this letter and attachments qualify as the revision list. There was a note about clarification to be sought as to how the applicant intends to power the facility. The existing building has more than enough power supplied for the proposed use at this location. It is my understanding that the landlord is currently pursuing some tenant separation of utilities, but that will be handled by the landlord under a separate permit. Another note was a request for more information about the gas powered generator that was noted in the special permit application. Due to the lack of exterior area available to the tenant, they're actually going to switch to a battery backup for the security to provide for the requirements by the CCC. So that'll just be located internally within the area of the other IT equipment.
Okay, and that written response was sent to planning, and we have a copy of it by email, I believe, from Jeffrey.
Yes.
Okay. So
And that's the extent of the requested information.
So if we find the application, otherwise complete, What we have done on some applications in the past is to attach the last planning letter. And then, or we could refer to their responses of today and say that we're recommending approval based on the planning department accepting the responses of the applicant's 823 letter. Because they do, I mean, as we've done many of these are pretty straightforward comments and answers relative to this applicant. But it's at the pleasure of the committee. But we are in a public hearing, so I want to make sure that I check with the public, either on Zoom or in the room, if you want to speak in favor or in opposition to this special permit, or if you have a question. Please make yourself known, and we will hear you. Jeffrey, let me know if you see anybody, okay? I'm not seeing anyone, and I'm not hearing anyone at this time, so I'm not seeing any public comment.
What do you recommend, Madam Chair?
So, to the applicant, do you have anything else that you wish to add?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. And committee members, if you are all set, we do have our standard conditions that I'd like to be sure we include.
Yes.
And if you want to refer to planning being accepting of the 823 letter, and that the applicant would agree to complete any remaining open items contained in the 823 letter? I'd entertain a motion.
Okay. So is the public hearing, we can first have to close that?
Yes.
So I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The public hearing is now closed.
And I'll recommend approval with the standard conditions plus the additional condition, if you could just read that relative to that letter, and making sure that he complies with all the requirements of that for the planning board.
Bear with me. I'm looking for my 7 conditions. I don't have them memorized, although I've read them enough times that I probably should by now.
We should have a sheet taped there.
I have the sheet, but I don't have it taped to my arm.
No, I'm saying-
Unfortunately.
Yeah, tape it to the table, yeah, no kidding, we do so many of these.
So, and I'm trying to stay otherwise organized. Jeffrey, if you could help me out with a copy of that, that would be great. It seems to
I
be
could
very-
read them into the record for you if you needed me to. I have them in front of me right now.
That would be wonderful.
Yes, please do.
We will accept that.
All right, number 1, that the owner of the building always pay the commercial property tax rate to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local laws for the duration of the special permit. Number 2, that the business retains a minimum 30% Holyoke residence for non-security jobs. Number 3, that the hiring preference be given to security personnel that are retired Holyoke police or are a retired member of another police department that now lives in the city of Holyoke. Number 4, there shall be no marijuana consumption allowed on site. Number 5, that the hours of operation be set according to city ordinances. Number 6, that the applicant must abide by Massachusetts general laws and guidances from the Cannabis Control Commission. Number 7, that the petitioner/applicant shall conform with city and state health laws, rules, and regulations, including odor nuisance controls for the duration of the permit.
And then, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to add condition 8, that the response letter to the planning department dated 8/23/22 be accepted by the planning department, or the applicant will meet any further open items for the planning department.
So that is my motion, that it be approved with those 8 conditions.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And Councilor Rivera's left the room, so I'll count that as a 4-0 to recommend approval of the special permit at the next city council meeting, which I expect will be September 1st. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, take care. I make a motion that we remove from the table item number 5, and if necessary, is there going to be, the public hearing's already been closed, so I just like
Correct.
to remove that from the table
Second.
for
All
discussion.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So item 5 is a zone change application from R2 to BH for Dennis Bullduck at 474 Pleasant Street. Lot 091-00-062 and 063 to develop into museum, restaurant, and motorcycle dealership. This public hearing was closed on 7/26/22. According to our regulations, the planning board has 21 days to provide a recommendation to the committee. And after 21 days elapse, the committee may act upon the application for the zone change. We had our public hearings, we took in all of the appropriate information. I think we heard a good deal of information from the public. From my perspective, I think this is a wonderful, creative, entrepreneurial idea for our city, and a very good one. And I've heard support from the committee all through the public hearing, which I hope the applicant continues to enjoy. So I would like to entertain a motion on this zone change.
I'd like to make a motion that it be adopted and approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And in
Under
terms,
discussion?
under discussions, I don't think in this case there would be any need for any conditions or anything like that. I don't believe that would be in order, so we'll just approve it. Just in support of doing this, one is community support has been, to my knowledge, unanimous. Number two, this will be extremely beneficial to the current owners who now have found, fortunately, a positive reuse for that section in the heart of Ward 4. This building had the potential to go into potentially disrepair, and to have a creative reuse like this is exactly what we're trying to foster. This is an all-around home run, particularly in light of what's going on at the other corners at that intersection. This will be very consistent with that. And the fact that abutters were in support, what more can we ask for? He has also made it crystal clear he plans to preserve the building. No small financial undertaking by any means. That is obviously a building with extremely important historical significance to the city that should not be discounted. And I'm glad to see that it is going to be preserved and reused. This is really a home run for Holyoke. And it's a blessing that Mr. Bullduck has stepped forward to take on what is a monumental task to do this. This is no small feat, and to pull this off is going to take some real chutzpah and some real courage on his part and a lot of money. So this is great, and I'm strongly in favor of this.
Under discussion, Councilor Rivera?
I would just like to echo the same. Pretty much, I think this project, if passes, or when it does pass, either or, is going to add a lot of value to a community or a section of Holyoke that is kind of finding a new identity, more or less, especially with like all the new businesses up and coming in that area. Not fully new, but Pix has been there for a long time. The tavern spot that's there now, if this comes through, and then if he comes through with some of the other things that he said that he would like to see in the future, that would be great. And having the residents get involved through the process was another piece, because in the beginning it wasn't everyone in favor. People got won over through the process, and that was a good thing to see and witness at the same time. So I appreciate the project. I appreciate the fact that we get to keep a church in the city of Holyoke that has lost so many, that had a bunch at one time. I am speaking in favor of the project.
Thank you. Councilor GIVNER?
Share your mic. Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been in support of this. And I just wanted to, reiterate that I think it's great for the community. I'm looking forward to seeing this project come together. I met with Mr. Bullduck a couple of times. I met with a lot of people in Ward 4 about it. And I think all their questions were answered. There was very little opposition. It was everyone who was in a butter was mostly in favor. I think I had one email of opposition. and I hope that he is able to quash those fears that this one person has, because I think it's a really good project, and I'm really excited to see it come together.
Thank you. Counselor Maldonado Velez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm voting yes on this, and I'm actually like trying to take Dennis out of the equation, trying to take the whole development out of the equation, because God forbid something happens to Dennis and we still have a BH zone tomorrow without this project in front of us, and I'm still okay with that. I think in this zone, it has the church, which is very difficult to develop under the current zone that it's in right now. So it needed to switch, and when I think of BH in that area, it makes sense. It's at 202 North, so it's like right on a state highway. It's literally like, it makes sense. There's a Dunkin' Donuts. There's going to be another drive-through restaurant, so it's like it doesn't look out of place. Whatever item or whatever use is being used for that BH zone in that area. So that's why for me it's a yes from the beginning.
Okay, thank you. And I should have noted earlier, but Counselor McGivern is on Zoom with us. Counselor Anderson Burgos is on Zoom. Counselor Peter Tallman is also with us. And as it was pointed out, Attorney Degnan was on too. And Attorney Bissonette is also. Okay. So, Counselor Bartley.
And Counselor Bartley's here too.
Yes, and Counselor Bartley's here too.
Yeah, okay, I know. Here we go. All that thin skin here. So just very quickly, first off, I heard a lot of speeches from the planning board, but we don't have a planning board report, Madam Chair. Can you just explain that for the public? I still want to keep the floor, but will we just explain that carefully and slowly for the public so that we can understand it?
What I will say is, once a public hearing is closed, there is a 21-day period upon which the committee will entertain a recommendation from the planning board. If that time passes and no recommendation is received, the committee is authorized to move forward and make a recommendation to the full council. I cannot speak to why, in this instance, the planning board has not made a recommendation. Maybe they were waiting for some information, maybe, I don't, I can't really get into their whole thinking. But I do believe that time is money, and people that want to do business need to have their requests acted upon promptly, and that's what we should do. So,
Madam Chair,
we have a motion.
No, I still have the floor. I just want to question, yeah. So I just appreciate the chair's leadership in this, but I hearken back to the last two meetings where there are a lot of speeches by the planning board members, but there's no report. So in other words, the speeches amounted to nothing but rhetoric, other than, and it wasn't. I have the floor. So it wasn't terribly positive in terms of the zone change. So the planning board members spoke out. Two of them in particular, and they don't back anything up with the report, which is their duty, their job. That's point one. Point number two is relative to the petitioner, is because it's been brought to my attention that the petitioner may not be in the game anymore. So can the chair enlighten us as to the petitioner's petition, if the chair is aware of that?
So I had communication from an active member of the church today asking for support for the project. Mr. Bullduck is on Zoom. If he wishes to speak, he can make himself known. If he doesn't, he doesn't have to.
Well, you closed the public hearing, so it's a little late for that. But,
well, it was closed a month ago, so.
You did, right, it was closed a month. Okay, so that's good news that Mr. Bullduck is here. And I'm just
here.
That's very good news. So as his first meeting when we had him here, I'm going to speak highly in favor of this. This is a fantastic, wonderful presentation. I'm so grateful for his investment. Hopefully there's an investment coming forward to preserve a church like this, to create a business, if he proceeds with the other plans that he's intimated, that's going to change that corner and go along to creating other things hand in glove with the other businesses that this committee, this council has helped foster, whether it's a zone change for for the former lot. There was a vacant lot that was for 10, 12 years. And then, so there's new businesses there with across the street with the People's Bank. And then the anchors have been up the street for especially Highland Hardware. So it's going to be a wonderful benefit to the city as a whole. And so I'm very grateful for his coming forward, and I look forward to voting for this, hopefully at our special meeting next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any counselors who are on Zoom wish to be heard? I'm not seeing any hands.
Ms. Tallman.
Oh, Counselor Tallman, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Bacon. I just think this is a very important project for the community. In that area, I'm very familiar with that area. I worked in that area for over 25 years. And that church and that area with Mel's and the parking lot is something that we want to save. It would be a tremendous cost to the city if we had to take that building down, or somebody would have to take it down. So with the other businesses in the area, I think it's very important that we get full support behind this, and hopefully Mr. Bullduck will make the investments that he's willing to do, and it'll be a great project, a terrific victory for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Not seeing any other hands. We have a motion to approve that has been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So this motion passes 5-0 out of Ordinance Committee. It will be recommended to the City Council on September 1st. The zone change needs 9 votes at City Council on the 1st to be approved. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Mr. Bullduck, for your interest in our city. We hope everything goes as the committee recommends, and we look forward to continued working relationship. Thank you. Good night. Okay. On to item 6. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 6, that the health director, building commissioner, and any other relevant city official meet as soon as possible with the ordinance committee to discuss odor mitigation at marijuana entities in Holyoke for the purpose of A, amending city ordinances, and or B, adding language to the list of conditions typically added to the marijuana special permit. So our public hearing was closed, and we've been waiting for legal form. I see Attorney Bissonnette here, and Attorney Bissonnette, I don't see that we have legal form yet, but it has been brought to my attention that we need to have the council take final action on this order by September 26th. And we are a little fragmented in our city council scheduling at the moment. And the only meeting in September that I am aware of at this time is on September 1st. So if we do need to go past the 1st, we would have to seek a special meeting in order, potentially, in order to be within the timeline, unless you think we could have legal form before the 1st, which, to give everybody time to look at it prior to the council meeting. So what do you think?
Well, originally, we were going to substitute a requirement under 10B5, removing the site plan review and adding in the requirement to the list of conditions that all manufacturers have to use industry best practices in their submissions for special permits. And it would be on them to keep up with the industry standards. We've heard some very good things about the use of carbon and some other new technologies to limit the odors from escaping. But there's always going to be some need for detection and some need for monitoring. So by placing the onus as part of a special permit, the city does have an enforcement mechanism by revoking the special permit if the odors exceed whatever the standard established by the Board of Health is. The answer directly is yes, we could have something ready for the council on September 1st.
Okay, thank you, because we have the 3 orders that we have to address. And I know we only have the one taken up at the moment on the odor, but the one fixing the site plan review, taking out the major site plan review, we need to complete by that date also. And the other matter that you referred to relative to definitions would fall under that same timeline.
Correct.
So, if you feel that you could have it ready by the 1st, then I think I'll defer to the committee if they wish to put these forward to the council pending legal form, which we would need prior to the meeting so everybody would have time to review it. Because otherwise, if people don't have time to review it prior, they probably won't be ready to vote on it on the 1st.
Councilor
Rivera?
Yeah, just not on September 1st. Like.
Well, we have a thing, it has to come out 48
No,
hours
but I'm saying,
before,
right, exactly.
or one person can say, I'm not
Right.
ready. Yeah.
As long as I don't get like the morning of September 1st and be like, hey, I just gave it to you guys.
Right. Right.
I would like to shoot for this Friday if that's possible and okay with the committee.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I just wanted, I'm not trying to, I know you know your business, but I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page with all the various orders floating around. Thank you. So
The one point I would make, Madam Chairman, with regard to the definitions, having conferred with Attorney Degnan this afternoon on this matter, we felt it's appropriate to take out the special permit not needed language, and the rest of it would then really be compatible with definitions within the state statute and with the CCC. So with that omission, as the council has, as the committee discussed at the last meeting, we would take out that reference for couriers not having to seek a special permit. That can be discussed and dealt with separately.
Okay, great, thank you. So, if you would like to offer,
And motion to suspend the rules, take up item 6, item 14, and where's the other one? I think those are the only two, together as a package.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, so now they're properly before us. Thank you, Counselor Maldonado Velez, for that. So the discussion that we've just had pertains and covers both. If the committee is comfortable with that, are there any other counselors who wish to speak on this issue? Not seeing any. Counsel Bartley?
Yeah, I just on item 6, as the chair remembers, she co-filed this with me, but this is the order that I filed that the night of that meeting, because there was a lot of controversy that night relative to that particular topic. But I feel like it's been pretty well addressed already in the condition we put on the special permits. Now, if we want to put this into ordinance, I think that'd be even better. But if it doesn't, I guess my point is it would be just nice to move this forward and move it out. So that's point 1, Madam Chair. And then point 2, relative to 14, I'm just not understanding why there would be one carve out on here. Let me just find it exactly, because I didn't realize we were going to take it up so quickly. So
It's the last sentence of the first
it's
paragraph
thank
under
you.
section
So for
710.
under courier, so I asked at the last meeting. I haven't had an answer to that. We have a marijuana ordinance. We have the requirement that everything relative to marijuana is subject to a special permit of the city council. We also see that the delivery operator, part of this co-order, has a special permit requirement. Why would we not stay 100% consistent and have it be subject to special permit? I have not to date received any kind of an answer to
Counsel
that.
Bartley, if I can clarify for you, what I just heard Attorney Bissonette say is he's going to put in legal form the definitions, leaving out that sentence. He said that we would address the matter of the special permit separately from the definition, is what I just heard him say. I don't know if the other members of the committee heard the same thing. Attorney Bissonnette, could you just clarify for us whether I heard you correctly relative to the definitions, that you are taking out the reference relative to a special permit or a business certificate from that section?
That's correct. That's a different discussion, and it doesn't belong in definitions.
Okay, thank you. So your question is answered to the affirmative, Counselor Bartley. It is
I
out.
appreciate the chair. I'm sorry I fell asleep for that part
Okay.
of the, for that
All right.
presentation, but at least that's somewhat helpful to me.
Good enough.
Thank you.
We like win-wins.
Always.
All right, so if the committee is satisfied,
So question.
Counselor Maldonado
question with
Velez.
So just make sure I'm following. So
Okay.
a marijuana courier would need a special permit to operate as a marijuana courier.
As it stands, the ordinance is otherwise silent on it, except creating this definition.
Gotcha.
But what I have been told by our legal department is that this, and don't quote me, it's either state law or the Cannabis Commission or a regulation that does not require the couriers to have a special permit, right? So somewhere in that world beyond us, that language does exist. And so I think Attorney Bissonnette is just simply saying, like Counselor Bartley is saying, it doesn't belong in a definition. It belongs in a separate discussion. That's all. Yeah. Okay? So if the committee would like to move this to City Council, pending the receipt of legal form prior to September 1st, we could vote to move item 14 and item 6 forward, if it is the will of the committee. Oh, here you go.
I'm like, sure, let's do that.
Now you do.
I'd like to make a motion to send it with legal form to the City Council for September 1st. I would be for this, and with the language taken out of the special permit required for marijuana courier. Is that correct?
Yep, and item 6.
Oh, sorry.
That's why I let you-
And for item 6 as well.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So these two move forward at 5-0, and Attorney Bissonnette, we look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, sir.
Hmm?
No, I said yes, sir.
Oh.
No fun allowed.
You don't want to be here till 10.
I think we're doing
Just
we're
saying.
doing pretty good so far.
I'll entertain a motion to take up item 7.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Favor, yes.
Aye. Okay, item 7, ordered that section 86-321 of the city's parking ordinance be amended by striking the following section. Northampton Street East, a point 20 feet north of Courser Street, a point 200 feet north of Courser Street. 2-hour parking 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Saturday. Now, my understanding, when I wanted to make sure I was understanding this order correctly, is that this will cause the signs to be removed from the front of the dentist's office, but it will cause the signs to remain in front of the bank. This is the no parking area.
If I may,
Council-
Madam Chair?
Counselor Anderson Burgos.
Yes, that is correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Counselor Bartley.
Well, yeah, so I did have a chance to speak to the Ward 6 councilor about this. So as this is written, no, it would remove the signs from in front of the bank all the way past Dr. Lockman-Donnie's office. And that's not what the Ward 6 councilor and I discussed. So this language is not going to cut it. What the goal is, however, and he and I agreed on it, is to amend this language to leave the signs standing as they are in front of the bank and in front and beyond the bank's exit to the next parcel, which is Dr. Lachman-Donnie's office, and then all signs would be removed from there. So in other words, it would be 20 feet north of Courser Street to some point just past the driveway for the exit driveway for People's United, soon to be M&T Bank. That would stay in ordinance. The portion beyond that point, which would be however many feet that is, crossing Dr. Lachman-Donnie's office, would be removed from ordinance.
So, thank you. Counselor, I just want clarification. Counselor
Me too.
Anderson Burgos, this is what I was trying to get clarification on because I was reading all these numbers and I didn't know what they meant. So, Counselor Anderson Burgos, is the statement that I made is correct, that the signs will remain in front of the bank and they will be removed from in front of the dentist's office, right?
That is correct. The original orders language, the original language, that so Councilor Bartley is correct. We had the discussion, and the ones that would be removed are the ones in front of the dentist, and the ones that will remain are the ones from the bank all the way to, what's the side street there?
Courser?
Courser, sorry, yes, Courser.
Okay, great. So I believe the thing for us to do, because we don't know all the numbers, is to approve the change with the words that we're saying and ask it to be put in legal form to cause that to happen, whatever the
Correct.
numbers are.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So
Make a mo-
just to be clear, if I guess it's Attorney Bissonette who's with us. I don't see Attorney Degnan, do I? I don't. So Attorney Bissonette, if you can share this information, because we just don't know, okay, what the absolute correct numbers would be to achieve this. And I do see that Attorney Degnan is on. Would she be doing this rather than you?
Yes, I would, Counselor.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see your name down there.
That's okay.
So as long as you're clear that the signs will stay in front of the bank and they'll be removed from in front of the dentist, and we just need the proper numbers to fix the ordinance that will make that happen.
Okay. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. And did we say all?
You're welcome.
Yes, we did. Yeah, I believe I
So,
approved it.
so that change was approved 5-0, and Attorney Degnan's with us on what's happening. Okay.
Make a motion to remove item 8 off the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ordered that an ordinance be created to allow for a fire chief contract, and that this ordinance also establish a salary range for the position. We do have a legal draft in our packet. And I don't know if all the committee members have had a chance to review it. Now,
One paragraph, so it's,
all right, well, you reviewed it now.
yes, yes.
Okay. And I know Attorney Ball was coming on if we had questions for her, but Attorneys Degnan and Bissonette are here.
I just had a couple technical questions.
Okay, do you want to field them, or do you want to wait until Attorney Ball can be here?
Do they feel prepared to talk about it? I mean, I see this is signed by Kathy Dignan, so maybe
okay.
she probably drafted it.
Okay, Attorney Degnan, do you feel comfortable to address a couple technical questions from Counselor Jourdain?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay, good.
You have the floor,
Oh,
Counselor Jourdain.
okay. Kathy, good to see you. One is the fire chief, I went through the chapter 41, section 1080, and I wanted to ask you, is our fire chief subject to section 31? that they alluded to in the ordinance, excuse me, in the state statute? Do you know?
I believe that they are. That was my thinking, and that's why I looked to this. And as you know, we do have a contract for the fire chief. And the big issue here, and you've read it, so I'm probably not telling you anything new. The big thing here is I believe that this would apply regardless of whether it's Civil Service Chapter 31. What this does is it gives the city the ability to contract with police and fire chiefs. And as you know, we did it for the police chief. And what I did here was simply parrot, if you will, what we've already done for the police chief. And the thing that's really important that stands out here, as I'm sure you already know, is that a contract with a police or fire chief will prevail over any conflicting provisions of any ordinance. And that's pretty key because our ordinance, as you know, there's a Schedule A, and the reason why you can't find it on the code is because it is it changes, it's fluid. And I think the most important part to recognize here is, the contract prevails. So what I did was I took in response to the request for an ordinance, I simply took the statute, made reference to that, and parroted the police chief. So I hope that helps, Counselor.
I think so. I just wanted to understand better if it says, in communities where the police chief or fire chief is subject to the provisions of Chapter 31, which you answered that in the affirmative, so that applies now. The provisions of Chapter 31 shall prevail when the provisions of this section conflict with those provisions. So it's seeming to suggest Chapter 31, and I wanted to understand what are the ramifications of Chapter 31 prevailing over this chapter, this 1080. So
Sure.
It seems like 31 comes first, and then the contract comes second, ordinances come third. And I just wanted to understand what that section, that Chapter 31 impact would be.
And it's a very important question, and thank you for confirming that, because when we're talking about wages for civil service employees, civil service doesn't govern wages or benefits. It does govern seniority. It governs discipline. It governs when you hire someone, because you have to hire them off a list. So if you bypass that list, so it really, Chapter 31 wouldn't apply to wage provisions here. And that's why I think you see this particular chapter in sections, because when you're talking about benefits and wages and things like that, that would fall to a contract, which we have. So it's a good question that you ask, I think. But I think even if I think the Chapter 31 with respect to fire chief would have to do with promotion, that kind of thing, promotion, discipline, that kind of stuff. So I think that when we're talking about wages, I think that this Chapter 41 and this particular section would govern.
Okay. So basically, the fire chief still maintains the civil service protection, so the contract can't conflict with any of that. But relative to pay, and I'm going to have to go back, and in light of all of this and this discussion that we're having, did you think that we needed to make any modifications to the proposed fire chief contract? Was there anything potentially conflicting with Chapter 31 in any way?
I did not negotiate that contract, but one thing I would point out, which I don't think it's going to change the outcome, but usually police and fire chiefs are exempted unless the city did otherwise. In other words, they accepted the statute. And I thought that that happened. I don't, to answer your question, no, I mean, I didn't negotiate the contract, but I don't think it would that Chapter 31 would have any import over it at all.
See, this is the interesting point, because I believe the fire chief is still civil service. And I believe that is part of the selection process, if I am correct. And that's sort of a unique thing here. And I'm just wondering that I think before the final go through of the contract, we should just double check to make sure there isn't anything in it conflicting with the civil service would be my guidance there. Obviously your point's well taken on the wage provisions and things, but some of these other things I'm just kind of curious to see if we're all on the same page on that. In terms of also the removal process and whatnot. But I do see there is another piece of this. And again, I haven't looked at the proposed fire chief contract in quite a while because I've been waiting sort of for this discussion to come up here in committee. But since we are using an employment contract, he doesn't or she doesn't get the default 1 year notice of non-reappointment. Is there a provision in the draft contract on non-reappointment? Like how much notice of non-reappointment?
I don't know. But what I can do, Counselor, is because just to make sure that we're on the same page about Chapter 31, I can certainly look to see whether or not, because I understand where you're coming from with respect to fire chief being civil service. That was my belief too, but I have no problem in going back because it would be it would be in our code to see whether or not the fire chief is civil service. Quite frankly, as I said, I don't think it would change this ordinance, but I'm willing to do that if it helps answer your other questions. I can certainly do that if you wish. And with respect to the contract itself, I don't know. I didn't negotiate the contract.
Okay.
So, but I can certainly look for you, just so to make it more clear. And because you said you had, issues with respect to, hiring and, promotion, demotion, things like that. I can certainly do that for you, Counselor, if you like.
Yeah, because what I was going to ask about is how the past practice happened with the last quote-unquote fire chief contract, which is, what did people realize that, if their contract wasn't renewed, that they would be out as the fire chief? And because we're now establishing a fixed term of office here of 3 years for fire chief. So I just want people to be aware of that, and that, if that is not renewed by the fire commission, then, you have a term of office as fire chief of 3 years.
And what's interesting about that, because you brought up some provisions in the contract, it's very possible that the fire chief is not civil service, that it's completely contractual, because, in a civil service scenario, you're there until, you have protections. You can't just be fired. You'd have to have under the statute, you'd have to give them notice, you'd have to give them a hearing, you have to go through all that. So I think a good place to start to answer your questions would probably be for me to look into the code in the special act, perhaps, because sometimes municipalities will enact a special act that says, hey, we want our fire chief to be civil service. And that's something that I would like to look into for you to clarify, because the point that you just brought up, if they're civil service, you wouldn't have a 3-year term. That seems to me to be somewhat in conflict with both civil service and this, well, maybe not this ordinance. I mean, not this law specifically, but I think it's something that we should look into.
Yeah, I agree. So, happy to talk to you further and just make sure we're all on the same page as to the coming in and coming out of these contracts, and making sure we're all on the same page as to what it means that if the fire commission said, hey, I'm giving X person a 3-year contract, that at the end of that 3 years, they could say, we don't want to give you a contract and you're not the fire chief anymore, and whatever that means. And now they can pick somebody else theoretically. So I just want to understand that process a little better. So I appreciate you researching that some more and letting us know, like, how does the coming in and the going out of fire chiefs work?
Yeah, and if it's civil service, it would be, like other civil service employees. You can't just say goodbye. You'd have to give them a hearing, and there would have to be cause. So it is a good question. It is a good question. So I would be happy to do that, or to make sure that everybody's clear.
Okay. So as it relates to this, do you think you would want to do more research to think that we need to tweak any of this language, or do you feel comfortable this is sufficient that's here now? Or do you think maybe we should table this? I appreciate this. It's pretty short and sweet. You've answered my questions thus far, but it sounds like we may want more clarity to see if we need to add anything here a little bit more, a sentence or a word, and then we revisit it maybe at the next meeting. What do you think, Kathy?
I think actually, given what the statute says, I'd be comfortable with passing it tonight. But I have no problem, Counselor, if you would like me to review that in the event there might be some tweaking, because certainly we want to get it right the first time.
So, can I just see if there's other questions from the?
Yeah, sure. I'm all set. Yep.
Any other questions from the committee? So I just have a clarifying question. So it sounds like one thing is clear, that if Section 31 applies, then the contract cannot be less protective of the employee than Section 31. And if Section 31, and if Section 31 does not apply, then the contract stands.
Yeah, regardless of any ordinance that we have.
Right.
So that's why I'm willing, for that purpose, I'm willing to just make sure that how 31 would apply. But really, I think that I think that the language of 41 is really clear, and I'm just double checking. I don't just want to make sure here, because I understand what Kevin was indicating. Yeah, in communities where they're subject to provision of 31 shall prevail. Okay, when the provisions of this section conflict. So I think it's a question that should be asked. I agree with the way you framed it, and I can do that checking before the next meeting, which I think is September 27th.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
We could wait a month. I mean, if we had to, just to make sure it's right.
All right. I mean, I'll go by the will of the committee. I mean,
I would just as soon
he already has
talk
a
to
contract as a practical matter. But just saying.
Yeah.
Right. But and the thing is, I guess my only thing is, if within this language, whatever that answer is applies, do we have to know it ahead of time, because it still will apply, right? I mean, it's good to know, but if this language includes yes or no, do this or that, then it kind of won't change what this is.
I just want to be clear that when we say the contract has a term,
that it's real?
Right,
Or
for a
not.
period of 3 years, is that a term of office, or it's a term of office, but then if they decide, no, after 3 years, we don't give you another contract, then you're just a chief with no contract.
But you're still the chief.
But you're still the chief.
I could say is,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So what exactly are we saying? And I just want us to be clear that are we
All right.
writing this crisp that the contract has a term, or you really, because this says you shall have now a contract, right? The statute says you may, so it's optional. They could do no contracts, they could do contracts. This says we're going to do contracts and that we're going to have a fire chief contract for 3 years. And which sounds good. The question is, if you don't, can you be the fire chief without a contract now? If we say you have to be fire chief with a contract.
All right.
If I may,
Councilor Bear.
unless there's like a provision where it's like, if no one has been chosen after a certain time, they automatically assume and go back to the last contract, and you continue the process.
But
Unless
right,
there's
but
something
see,
that's
we're not ever going to be in the position of negotiating the contract.
yeah, no,
We
I
don't
know.
know, that's the board does that.
Right.
Yeah,
Fire commissioner
So,
does that,
yeah, so,
If I may?
so Councilor
Many
Degnan,
times when we, oh, I'm sorry.
Attorney Degnan, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. Many times when we do contracts, at least I shouldn't say all the time, but when you do collective bargaining agreements, for example, they will have Chapter 31 language in there to the effect that, hey, look at, we're going to comport with what's in 31. I'm not sure if the fire contract had that, but that's also something to consider.
Okay. All right, so.
How about, you want
so
the fire
we-
commissioner's here.
So we would have to suspend rules.
Oh, I make a motion to suspend the rules to hear from Commissioner Trask.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, no, thank you. Yeah, so just to offer some clarification, so we do the appointing of the fire chief, and it's up to the city to negotiate the contract. So because there is no collective bargaining agreement with, the fire chief is not part of the collective bargaining agreement for the rest of the department. So in some cities, it might be, the fire chief's salary is predicated on double the highest earning, say, firefighter, right? Here, it's a separate bargaining with that individual. So if there was no fire chief, it would be an acting chief, which would be one of the deputies. So we could have that, right? And so it really, if the contract were to expire, so it'd be like, let's say the chief was there for 10 years, right? So we couldn't just create one contract and then say, okay, there's going to be no raises, for the duration of that person's term. It causes a pause, say after 3 years, to say, okay, is there an additional, should we, give the person a raise? And that's not even within our purview. We just appoint the individual, and then it's up to the city to, bind that person in contract and provide compensation. So that's kind of where, we stand.
That might be.
So it's more about that than it is about the conditions of employment and continued employment. It's
Right.
more about the benefits relative to the position.
Yeah, because
And
it
what
is
you're
it is
trying
a
to
civil
dig into
service.
is the
Yeah, it's a civil service
condition of
position. There is a
employment.
test, and
It is.
Yeah,
The chief
it
is.
is. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I always thought it
Yeah.
to be, so that brings Chapter 31
So
into
that would
it.
apply.
That would apply, and,
So the 3 years would be for the conditions of employment, not the fact of employment.
right. But what's interesting, though, is,
So now can we pass
this,
it?
hold on, I just want us to be all clear, that Chapter 31, though, doesn't speak to pay.
Correct.
Right, because they're not part of the other the
Right.
larger collective bargaining agreement.
So theoretically, we're saying here that he or she is the fire chief, but this says you guys, the Board of Fire Commissioners, will negotiate and award the contract. That's what the statute says.
Yeah, I mean, we pick the chief, so by default, that person's going to be awarded the contract eventually once the city,
Once you negotiate it.
Right,
And,
exactly, right. We don't negotiate a contract. We just hire the individual. It's up to the city to negotiate the contract.
Right, but there is a couple things, though, here. He can only get paid what you agree to pay him. And you could, he could agree to leave. That's his choice. It's America. But you could say your pay is X. You have total liberty to say that. He has to agree to it, of course.
Commission or the city? The
Commission. It's the Fire Commission.
Okay.
It says it right here, Fire Commission.
Great.
Yeah. So you
He's
ever,
saying they don't negotiate the contract.
We don't. We just hire. and then
Okay.
it's up to the city because I don't believe we have the authority to bind the city in contract.
Well,
The mayor.
It would be the mayor.
but
So then the mayor says.
the law department is drafting this up, and it says, any city, and I see where they're going with this, why they pointed to you, because
Right.
you're technically the appointing authority.
Right.
Says any city or town acting through its appointing authority. So that's you, not the mayor. The mayor is not the appointing authority of the fire chief.
Yeah, see, and we don't actively delegate that authority to the mayor or back to the mayor in order for him to negotiate this contract. So we don't do that. We just appoint the person and then we
Right.
leave it up to the city to do that. We don't take an active role in that part.
Oh, okay.
So maybe there's another step that needs to be involved
I
on
think
our
so.
end.
I
Yeah.
think,
Okay.
you
You're
know,
not setting the pay.
Right.
It's the mayor.
If I may.
Right. Correct.
We're getting
Just
into the weeds.
yeah. So I was gonna say so then who negotiates the actual contract? Then you guys should technically be in communication with them.
Right.
The mayor.
So we should be sitting in the room when that negotiation happens, in other words.
or, yeah, I would think so, or at a
at least
minimum,
giving
they're
recommendations.
checking in with you.
So hang on a second. Attorney Dagnan,
Yes.
based on what you're hearing our commissioners say, would that change your language, or would you say we have to change some process?
Well, it's interesting what Commissioner Trask is indicating, and Councilor Jordan is correct. This is the why I drafted it, because it is the Board of Fire Commissioners that's the appointing authority.
Okay.
Maybe, the mayor might, say, look, this is what we can pay. But I still think the fire commissioners are the appointing authority. So we can't say the mayor is. And if you look to what we have for police chief, just by way of comparison, the only difference, and it's because of the way our charter operates, there is no police commission to appoint a police chief.
Right.
So that's why that ordinance reads the way it does. Since the Board of Fire Commissioners is the appointing authority, I think that this is the correct language.
Okay.
However, we're still looking at, I understand with respect to Chapter 31 and what's being said, but, perhaps I could have some conversations with Mr. Trask and with Commissioner Trask, and flesh this out a little more in case we do need to change it. But just so you know, I was looking at the charter and the statute when I was writing this.
Okay.
So maybe we have to flesh this through a little bit.
So maybe then, we have an upcoming commission meeting next week. So maybe I can add this as an agenda item to have some sort of reconciliation between this
process.
committee's work and the fire commission.
All right.
Like I said, I don't think it's ever been a problem in the past, but just for the sake of consistency with the ordinance, whether we're at the table or we delegate that authority back to the mayor as part of the appointment process, one of the two things, should happen, and it's something that I can make sure is brought up at our next meeting, which will be next week.
Right, but so just to clarify, historically, the cart got before the horse here.
Right.
A contract just began to be negotiated
Mm-hmm.
out of whole cloth, and there never was any ordinance created establishing it. So we're kind of backing in to
Right.
make it correct.
Yeah, no, and we
And
want to do
so
everything, that makes sense, yeah.
That's really what we're doing, just to make it proper.
And-
you know? So Attorney Dagnan, you think we should table now to clarify process, et cetera?
Yes.
Can you make a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion to table it. I don't think there'll probably be a lot of tweaks, but thank you, Jeff, and everyone, so we'll make a motion to table.
Chair
Is there a
Bacon,
second? Counselor McGivern?
thank you. If I could just, real quickly,
Sure.
there's one more step that I think we've gotten away from, whether it's the chief of police or whether it's the fire chief, is if the mayor or the commission negotiates a contract, that contract has to be subject to appropriation and come to the city council for a vote. We do this with all other contracts when it comes to any contract that has an impact on the budget itself. And I think I want to make sure we include that in our discussion if we could.
Can I add?
Okay, thank you. Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, just to Counselor McGivern's point, because I think he's absolutely correct. I think one of the discussions on maybe some tweaking is subject to appropriation by the city council, just to add that maybe even to the ordinance. And maybe we add it to the police chief one as well, just to codify what Councilor McGivern's saying. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, all right, for next time.
So I have a motion.
To remove item number 9 on the table, which also brings us to Mr. Trask.
Did I get 5 ayes to table the other one?
I think so, right?
Not yet.
Oh, okay, I made a motion to table, I'm sorry.
Is there a second? Second. All in
Yeah.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to remove item 9 from the table. Sorry about the discussion on that other one, guys, but
Just remember, you
kind
wanted
of.
the short meeting.
I know, the nerve of me.
Don't start tapping your watch, though.
No, we're making good time here by ordinance committee standards.
Okay. Item 9. And since he's right here.
Look at that, perfect timing.
Motion and a second, please.
I already made the motion to remove it
Is there
from
a
the.
second?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 9, ordered that ordinance 26-33 emergency management director be examined and updated to reflect the current responsibilities of the position. And we have our commissioner and our emergency management director with us. So maybe you could just, we have the language in front of us from
Yeah.
legal. Should the committee just endorse that and move it forward as you're giving us that information being in the position? So maybe you could just run through it for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, so this kind of came about as a result of, so right before the pandemic hit, actually, it was in February of 2020, I was asked by then Mayor Morse, based on my prior experience in emergency management, I actually serve in that capacity here in Holyoke over at ISO New England, and to actually serve as emergency management director for the city of Holyoke, and that was at the recommendation of the fire chief. So for probably, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years prior, the fire chief had held the responsibilities of both fire chief and emergency management director. While this may make sense in smaller communities, but in the cities the size of Holyoke, it just makes sense to have the positions separate, because the way during an actual incident, right, the fire chief has responsibilities. So if it's a major fire, hazmat situation, whatever, the chief is going to be out commanding on-scene operations, whereas the job of emergency management is to deal with the support of the responders, and also to deal with the collateral impact of the incident. So whether that's sheltering victims, dealing with power outages, food, water, things like that, drawing in resources from other communities, mobilizing resources here in town. This is all work that happens within the Emergency Operations Center and is in support of the first responders, both police, fire, DPW, electric light. And so that being said, and of course public health in terms of the pandemic. So been serving in this role for now 3 years. 3 years, yeah, just about 3 years this February. And one of the things that I noticed is that there really hasn't been a lot of formality, around this particular role. So I understand, based on some history that I've learned, that it was a full-time role. Then the full-time role kind of went away because the person left. It was then, the fire chief was then asked to fill this role, and it was kind of there ever since. So the purpose of this ordinance really is to codify the duties and responsibilities of this position, so that regardless of who holds the position, it can be, it can be designed in such a way that it serves the needs of the residents of Holyoke.
So can I just ask you to, because we have current language
Yep.
relative to the position, and you've given us new language.
Right.
So could you contrast for us what is new
Yeah, I think
that we haven't had before?
Yeah, I think so. Really, it deals with the specific duties and responsibilities of this role, what the expectations are of the person. Because, in the past, it's always been spoken in generalities. So I tried to be incredibly, as specific as possible, while still keeping in mind that this is an ordinance and you don't want to get too...
Not a job description.
Right, exactly. You don't want to be a job description, but at the same time, you want to at least lay out some baseline expectations so that it's not a role that's just given to somebody without any experience. So that's where, you know, we talk about what the availability looks like of the position. You know, it's a 24/7 position. So I'm on call 24/7 throughout the year, no matter what happens, whether it's sheltering, you know, people from the cold, whether it's, you know, a fire that forces an evacuation, could be a storm, whatever. You know, that's important. The other thing was also making sure that the language within the ordinance was in alignment with duties and responsibilities that are industry best practice, as outlined by the Mass Emergency Management Agency, Federal Emergency Management Agency, so that we're consistent, so that the person occupying this position has similar expectations placed on them that any other large city within the Commonwealth has.
So how does the 24/7 on-call work?
So basically, I am on call. So if, you know, it's my duty that, you know, to look at, you know, whatever incidents may happen, or be on call for something that may happen that's unexpected. So like today with the severe weather, I was tracking it, you know, over the last day or so. And as the storm was approaching, just, you know, sitting on conference calls with National Weather, sitting on conference calls with Mass Emergency Management to discuss, okay, well, what is, you know, the current track of the storm? What is it going to look like? For a while there, they were looking at it and saying, okay, these are severe thunderstorms. It could produce tornado warnings. And as we all know, we laughed before 2011 happened.
Right,
and 2011 happens, and, you know, you got buildings coming down. So it's just following that and being aware. And then if it does become a real threat, is then conducting that coordination with all of the relevant city departments. So, for example, we had a couple major snowstorms, major ice storms that happened earlier this year. What we would do is the night before, day before, we would set up a briefing call. We'd listen to National Weather. We'd get all those departments on the line. And then we would just talk about the, you know, what the impending, the impending impact is going to be, and then continue to have those conversations and have like a bridge line open where we can talk, coordinate, share information, and respond effectively to that storm and deal with whatever impacts are as a result of it.
Mm-hmm. And I do appreciate, I'll recognize you in a second, yeah. And I do appreciate the clarification, and I asked you and I also asked legal, because whenever we're looking at a thing relative to duties and job
Right.
in an ordinance form, I'm trying to look ahead and say, you know, what are the ramifications of what we're doing? If we're simply clarifying and being more specific about detail, great. If the goal is that we are writing these things in and they're new duties and it's an argument for a change in grade, a change in pay, a change in working conditions, then I like to know that at the time.
Right.
Because what I don't like is we change a job description and then a month later we say, oh, well, you did this, so now you have to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So
understood.
this is why I try to ask the questions
Yeah.
ahead of time, not to be offensive, but just to be
Oh, no, of
like,
course.
what are we really doing here?
Yeah, the job by its nature is unexpected, right? It's got to be
Well,
available
exactly,
24/7 because,
exactly.
you know, just like and again, just like a fire chief or a police chief would be, or a DPW superintendent, it's, you know, you're there to deal with the unexpected. So that's why it's such an important thing to include in there, that there is that expectation, so that you're mindful if you go out of town for the weekend, or
That you make a plan.
yeah, or if you're, you know, at a wedding or something like that, you call up the fire chief, you call up somebody, you know, and say, hey, can you cover for me
Okay.
these duties, right?
So
It's just,
that's, okay.
yeah,
All
that's
right.
why
No,
it's
I
there.
appreciate it, and I hope you don't take offense at my
No,
questions.
not at all. No, it's because, again, it's something that kind of operates in the background, that it's not a visible thing. So it's
Right.
not like, you know, when somebody gets their car broken into, the police show up, right?
Right.
House burns down, the fire department. This is something that happens in the background, the
Right.
planning, the coordination, and all that. So any chance that I get to have a forum to be able to talk about what this job does and what the activities are around planning and coordination, you know, and just a couple other things that we have recently started is the local emergency planning committee. That's been spun up again, which is a coordination effort between government officials, the business community, the faith community, the nonprofit community, and the healthcare community, to have representation at regular planning meetings to talk about different emergencies and their impacts on the community at large, and how we can mobilize those resources in order to respond effectively. So we meet monthly on that, and then we're also starting a community emergency response team. Now, this is a group of just Holyoke residents who want to serve their neighbors during a disaster. they'll get special training, and these are the folks that'll show up if there's a fire to help pass out donations. You know, if we have to shelter people, they'll be the ones working the shelter. So these are some of the activities, and they'll also be working planned events, right? You have Celebrate Holyoke, you have the Fiestas, you have the parade. You know, these are people that will work and help out there to build camaraderie pre-disaster, so that when we have the real thing, we got a strong working team that can serve their community. So these are all the activities that kind of happen in silence, and then once, you know, an emergency happens, that's where, you know, you get your benefit.
Gotcha. Counselor Vera, did you want to be recognized?
Yeah, I just had a question, just for clarification around for emergency. What constitutes like the emergency response? What kind of, like, obviously if it's like a huge flood or a tornado, but like would a small fire or a huge fire, some form of, just for clarification in general, like.
So I think there's a threshold, right? So when a fire
Yeah,
happens.
that's what.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when there's a fire that happens, generally it's the, you know, the individual or the landlord's responsibility, you know, to place the victims, right? So, and we know it's not a perfect world, and sometimes, you know, those ends are not tied up. So that's where emergency management can step in and help coordinate resources, and again, that's where we talk about that local emergency planning committee, where we have all those groups represented that can provide assistance to folks that are impacted from something like that. Give an example. Over the winter, we ran shelters, I want to say 5 or 6 nights over the course of the winter, where it was sub-zero weather, and we had folks that were on the street. And we worked with like the Masons to get their hall, and we brought in resources like shelter kits and bedding and pillows and food, things that we have as supplies that we get through our grant program, which the council is, you know, always, you know, helps us and accepts it, and, you know, provides us the funding in order for us to get the reimbursable grants, so where we buy these cots, these blankets, so that if it's something like that where we're just taking folks off the street because there's a cold emergency, whether it's a fire that displaces people, if there's a flood, if it's extreme heat and we want to pass out water, if it's a tornado, if it's a, you know, it could be anything. Large event coordination. So there's really no threshold. I think wherever there's a need, I think this group is there and it's available. And you know, it's here for Holyoke. So I don't, you know, whereas I think that there's mechanisms in place to take care of folks, you know, for the more common occurrences, you know, the more common, you know, incidents that happen, you know, this team is available to help where needed.
Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Jordan.
Yeah, hey, Jeff, again, thanks for coming in. So this gives us the ordinance change from the current language to what is being proposed, and that seems pretty vanilla.
Yep.
Question is there a decision to be made here? Like it says, and the annual compensation of the emergency management director's job will be XXX dollars. So I'm like,
that's up to the mayor. You know, it's really.
But we would need to set that by ordinance. Like if we're going to adopt an ordinance, we'd have to have like. Is there a salary right now?
So right now, the salary that's being paid is a carryover from the stipend that was given to the fire chief. So instead of the fire chief receiving, it was a $4,000 a year stipend.
Yeah.
Which is what I remembered. Yeah.
Yep. So that stipend is being paid as a biweekly check to me.
Okay.
A very small one, but it's
yeah.
it's you know, and that's just you know that's how they've chosen to set it up.
Okay.
So just if I can just clarify, you still have the floor, but so that would be part of that stipend addendum then, right? That list that we have?
I'm not.
Potentially?
Potentially. But if we are, I mean, at a minimum, we should put the 4,000 in there for now. Now, if there's a proposal from the mayor down the road to say we want to make this more hours and 10,000 or whatever, but this is what we're trying to, at least I'm trying, I can't speak for others, but I'm trying to understand. This is just clarifying the description, which is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, you know, either language of subject to appropriation, whatever. It's something that was always, budgeted for as part of the
Yeah.
emergency management budget, and then the mayor would then write a contract or an employment agreement. So right now, I'm technically an employee of the city,
Yep.
and I receive a paycheck with the whatever
$4 grand,
deductions,
yeah.
and the deductions are taken out, and that's it. Yeah. So it was just we just don't know what that next step is going to be, because right now my contract is going to be coming up, or my employment agreement will be coming up, and that's up to the mayor to figure that out.
'Cause I don't think we have anything in the budget.
Well, the $4 grand must be in the budget. I think
Beyond that.
Yeah, beyond that
I mean,
we
if we're
don't.
talking full-time versus a stipend.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
it's, then it would be, are we creating a job? It used to always be traditionally a part-time job. for
Oh yeah,
$4 grand.
I'm not leaving my job. But,
Okay.
I didn't think so, yeah.
No, but it's more just, I think this is really just an effort to, really put some language around, what the expectations are of the position. So,
Okay.
I fully understand that. I mean, I've been doing it for 20 years. My first job was the city emergency management director full time.
Chicopee,
So,
yeah.
right. So it's not, I'm no stranger to it, but, if I decide not to do it anymore, then, I just want to make sure that that's in there, so that whoever the next person that comes along has those expectations placed on them.
Okay, so are you comfortable with us adopting this?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. No, that's great. No, the law department has
Yeah,
been
that's what I'm gonna
incredibly helpful, and we've been going back and forth on it, and really, it's just, this is like the first step, and then this would then springboard into the mayor having that conversation about, whatever the new contract will be.
Well, I would make a motion to adopt this ordinance change, putting in the amount $4,000.
Yep.
Dollars, and if you, the mayor, whoever, down the road
Yeah.
decide to do something else, then I'm sure you'll let us know.
Oh, that's fine with me. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right.
The support.
And thank you for putting this forth,
Yeah.
and I was happy to get it going.
Oh, thank you,
Do
yeah.
But I'm always kind of looking at, I'm trying to look at the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate that you're looking toward the future too.
Yeah, and that's
Right?
really, I mean, otherwise we could have just let it go. It was just one of those things that we wanted to make sure that it's done right, because it kind of came about beginning of the pandemic. It was a different administration, and I just want to make sure that we're doing things right, just like we're talking about with the with the fire chief's issue. So,
Second. No, I just want to second.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
great. Thank you very much for your
Thanks,
support.
5-0. Thank you
you.
very much.
Appreciate your help.
And we appreciate what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, good, thanks.
Thanks.
Motion to take up item 10.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Item 10, order that Appendix A of Section 2-35 of our ordinances be amended to add the positions of Assistant Procurement Officer and Grant Manager for the Police Department. We've already created the positions, now we just have to make them so they're in the ordinance so they can hire.
Okay. And I'm assuming, oh yeah, here we go.
You have the
Language.
language behind the order. And I saw, oh yeah, Attorney Ball is here if anybody has questions for her. She said they are looking to fill at least one of the positions, but they need to have all the i's dotted and the t's crossed to be able to move forward.
Are these the grades that we had discussed before?
So, Attorney Ball, when we did the positions that we're talking about here, adding to the schedule,
Yes.
these are the grades that we had when we accepted them and as were determined by our HR attorney, our consulting attorney?
So,
Or they're
yes,
in the grid?
the amounts that were approved in the supplemental budget seem to fall like right around the mid-range. I just looked at the current Schedule A to see really where we could put them. The assistant chief procurement officer was already part of this ordinance, but it was removed, I think, when the position was not filled. I'm not sure how many years ago, so it's probably a higher grade than it was before, but we tried to stay consistent with, what the amount was that was budgeted for and approved in the supplemental budget.
So when we do these, does our consulting HR attorney look at them for equitable determination of grade relative to responsibility of job? Because that was kind of the whole idea behind this.
I mean, we certainly, we talk about that. This is one of them. I mean, they're both, these are technically ordinance positions, so they're not really something that's, going into a union contract, so it's not really something I talk with our.
But the scale that we put together with the salary study, that was
Yes.
for the non-union people.
Correct.
Right. So when we're doing, so what I've been trying to accomplish is we set that up trying to be equitable in terms of duties, responsibilities, and pay.
Yes.
So when we have an ordinance position, I'm trying to be consistent with that framework so if we're saying this is a grade 10, are the responsibilities of this assistant chief procurement officer the same as everybody else that's a grade 10? Are they as great or not more or not less than the other people who are a grade 10? Because that grade has meaning, right?
Right. So, I mean, it's hard for me to say because, I mean, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not sure I agree some of these positions should be in the grades that they're in, but so the current Schedule A has a grade 10 position of an associate city solicitor. So, one of the lawyers in our office is in a grade 10.
Yeah.
This position is obviously like the assistant to the department head, the purchasing agent. So this is the assistant. I mean, they don't have the same responsibilities, but they're in the same pay range.
The same cubby, if you will.
Right.
Any other?
I have a question. And
Counselor Jordan?
yeah, relative to the grant manager position, this in the order actually filed by Counselor McGee, it said the grant manager for the police department. Is the intent to put the grant manager position still in the police department?
It is. We currently have I think he's a sergeant. He's been a lieutenant, but I think everybody's familiar with him, Sergeant Hart.
Yes.
Who has really been the person that has been in charge of doing all of the grants over there. And I couldn't begin to tell you all of the grants that he manages. But I think the issue really has become, we lose a police officer that can be doing police work. Because he's so tied up with doing this very important grant work. But Sergeant Hart, is not going to be with us forever, and I don't mean that he's going anywhere bad, but when he gets ready to retire, somebody's got to do this work, and we're just really trying to be proactive in keeping things the way they are. And
right.
So this is just really what we came up with. I think it's really a great idea.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. This is a position that should be a civilian position, but I'll take it one step further. I think it's ludicrous and bordering on the absurd that we pay $250,000 to an employee to be writing grants when clearly this is case evidence, state's evidence number one right here that says we would be paying a range of $53,000 to $73,000, and that the taxpayers are currently paying $250,000 for this exact same service. And now we have the law department and the mayor coming in saying that work is valued at, 50 to 70 grand per year. So I do thank the proactiveness, and it appears that you've now saved the taxpayers $200,000 a year. This should have been done a long time ago, apparently. And, this is what drives taxpayers crazy, right? That we've been wasting all this money doing this same duty for years and years, and we could have hired a civilian to do this money for, 1/5 of the cost. And so I think this is high time that we're doing this. Thank you. And hopefully the audit will continue to point out maybe other areas in the department that should be, when we have police officers making exorbitant salaries doing non-police work or civilian work, There may be other ones that will be getting pointed out as well. Thank you.
Counselor Givner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a quick question about the grant manager. Is that is the grant writer? Is that in the job description? Because a grant manager, it sounds like manages the grant funds, not necessarily writes the grants. So I think if it's a position, we should clarify that it is the writer that we're getting for that position.
It's a good point. Do we have the job description?
I don't have the job description with me, although I do know that it's a new position. So I think it's something that personnel was working on drafting. I mean, we haven't advertised for it yet because we need a home to put the position in. But what I know that Sergeant Hart does is there are some existing grants that we get that he manages. I believe he's doing grant writing. I can't really talk to what he's doing specifically, but I think it would be a little bit of both.
Well,
looking for grants and managing the existing grants.
Right. So we may want to clarify that, but that's why I thought, when you made the comment about this position would be replacing his duties relative to the grants, Okay. Thanks.
No, I could wait. It's cool. Even though my wife is probably texting me. It's all right. Now, my question also was around the grant manager position. And for me, it's because it's new and we probably need a grant manager for a lot of other departments. I don't understand why it's housed in just one department and it's not under the city's guys or like under the mayor's department. So that way they can manage a variety of grants. So are we going to get a grant manager for DPW, one for Parks and Rec, one for every other department that we have? Or can we just have one department that actually writes and manages grants all together? I mean, especially if Councilor Jordan just mentioned we've been paying like $225 a year in general around just grants. Just for grant. Just to manage grants and doing all of that stuff. So that would actually fund the whole department around grants, writing grants, accepting them, making sure people meet the deadlines and all that stuff. So like for me, it's like, why just keep it in police and actually make it into the mayor's office so that way they can manage a lot more grants than just that one particular piece. Yeah. But that's.
I take your point, but I think that would be a future. Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Chair Bacon. Just a couple points along the same lines. The police department has a significant amount of grants, and any department that can support the salary of a grant manager, grant writer, should do it through the grants themselves. But if we examine Sergeant Hart's salary, not all of it comes from grants. Not all of it comes from his work with grants. He still works as a police officer. A lot of his salary is overtime. Some of his salary is overtime related to coming before the Finance Committee in terms of presenting and answering questions on grants themselves. My point I want to make is with the salary we're looking at for this particular position, the person we call into the Finance Committee is the Chief of Police or his delegate. And if it's going to be a delegated civilian position, is that position going to be coming in on a salary, or are they going to be coming in on overtime hours?
We don't know.
Is this an exempt position, law department?
I think that's the intention of it. I haven't heard otherwise.
That's Schedule A.
Yeah, so an exempt position would be no overtime, so that's that would answer Councilor McGivern's good question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're creating this position of grant manager, but to Councilor Rivera's excellent point, there should be an exam. We probably do need a full-time for the police, but your point is well taken. All these other grants, how are we managing all that? But we kind of defer to the mayor to organize the work. He sort of assigns where people go. We just sort of create the positions. I think we'd have to lean on him to where he wants to put people and how he wants to organize the departments.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to make a point.
Maldonado Velez?
Back on, thank you, Madam Chair. April 5th, we have an order to develop a grant manager position as an ordinance. So just wanted to make that point that I agree with you. Like, a lot of good points have been made. I mean, police department, the first month of the fiscal year, there was a $130,000 transfer being requested. Like, I don't think police department has an issue with having money. And to the point that was made around like this specific role, like, yeah, it is proof that this role, the managing grants can be done for less, and we have been spending $200,000 plus for the last couple of years doing this. So, but yeah, I just wanted to make that point. We do have an order in here to hopefully create a grant manager position that will overlook all of the city, because I think that grant manager position will be beneficial for the whole city, not just the police department. So.
And is everybody else set?
Yep.
So, Lisa, just circling back to the Assistant Chief Procurement Officer, do you happen to have in front of you on the schedule the range for the Chief Procurement Officer?
I don't know the range, I don't have it in front of me, but it is, that position is part of the professional supervisors.
Okay.
So that, I mean, that was subject to a recent MOA.
So, but was there a reasonable distance between the pay of this position and that position?
It's not a huge distance, but I don't know, you know, what the mayor's plan is for, I think whoever's going to be hired, it's really going to depend on their experience as to, you know, what range, because the mid-range is 70,000, but it's certainly, you know, a person could be hired at less than that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, so is everybody else set? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt this.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 5-0, it'll go forth on September 1st.
Go forth and prosper.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And you have one more, right?
I do.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to remove item 11 from the table.
All in favor? Aye. Ordered that Section 2-40 and Section 2-41 of the city ordinances regarding vacation leave be amended to add language that the city may credit a new employee with additional paid vacation time based on relative prior employment experience. And we do have a draft ordinance language before us in your packet.
Yeah, when did we receive this?
June 7th. It says June 7th. It was. Oh,
The order.
The actual
I think
ordinance.
The order was filed at June 7th, but I think we got the draft today for the whole committee, and I think, did I get it yesterday or Friday?
I think it was sent on
You
Friday.
did you send it to everybody?
I sent it to you and to Jeffrey.
Okay, so Jeffrey usually sends email drafts out. Did you get it Friday? Or you got it
You did?
Monday? Either Friday or Monday, we have it, but
All right.
it's relatively recent. It's recent.
Okay, so do we want to hear, I'm assuming the law department
Maybe you
is,
wanna
are they
run
the
down-
advocate for this, or?
Yeah, maybe you want to run down it first, because I shared with Lisa that initially I thought we were talking about people who had been employed by the city prior, but this is broader than that.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to run over it with us.
Sure. So, in the ordinance, there's approximately 30 employees who are not in a union. And right now, the way the vacation works is for your first 5 years of employment, no matter where you fall on this schedule, you are limited to 10 days of vacation. And this obviously includes, and I'm not singling anybody out, but several department heads that are on this schedule.
Such as?
Some of which are you know, empty positions that we've not been able to fill. But several department heads that are on the schedule. So, you know, as I had mentioned, I think to Councilor Bacon, one of the things that the professional supervisors have in their contract is the ability to have the mayor grant them additional vacation time based on prior experience, how many years they've been, doing this type of work, what kind of skills they're bringing to the position. And that's been really very helpful to us in making some of our recent hires, because we have people, we're asking them to come and work for the city. We're offering them whatever we're offering them. Maybe the salary's competitive, maybe it's not really competitive enough, but they're looking at, what am I going to get for vacation time? Because this is how much vacation time I have, in the place that I'm coming from. And having that language in the professional supervisor's contract is really, it's just tremendous. It's helped us to keep people here and to also attract people to come in. And in looking at, some of the empty positions we have on Schedule A, I think that this could help to not only hire people, but also keep them as employees if the mayor has that ability. And, it's him coupled with personnel, looking at what is the prior experience this person is bringing. It really, in my view, is going to bring you a better employee when you have this ability to do this, because as it currently is, there is no flexibility. It's 10 days, for your first 5 years of employment. And I think, we're going to lose people. We're going to lose candidates. There's one particular position that, we've been trying to fill for, almost, it feels like a year. And I think it has been close to a year that we've had an empty position in this schedule. And I think that's possibly going to be an issue when we do find somebody. So that's really, what's behind this, is just to really give, the mayor, a little more flexibility to be able to say, you're bringing a lot to the table. This is where you've been for the last 10, 15, or 20 years. I have this ability based on what you're showing me to grant you additional vacation time. Yeah. And I'm not suggesting that every new person that gets hired just automatically can be negotiating for that, but that if there's a reason to do it, that the mayor has the authority to do it.
So, just following the path of unintended consequences, if you're looking at a big department and somebody has flexibility, I mean, this happens in a lot of places. The place can't hire, the pay's going up, so they're hiring new people in higher than the people that have been there, and they're getting more benefits than people who've worked there, say, for 5 years. So what's to guard against the person who came in at the 2 years, worked their way for the 5 years to get to the 3 weeks or whatever it is, to keep the, equitable application of the policies? I mean, I think we'd have to be careful that the new person coming in isn't getting more than some loyal person who was here for 20 years that waited, put in all the time to get where they got. But that's just me looking at the other implications, because once you start getting people looking at things that way, it can be problematic. I mean, I'm totally in favor of anybody who worked for the city before that's coming back to the city should be credited for all their time they worked here, right? Like,
by the way, that's already law. We don't need a law for that. That's already the case.
Well,
just like you get credit for your retirement withholding.
Well, I don't know. I've
rate,
been
too.
led to understand that if somebody worked here prior and they had a break in service and they return to our employment, they start at the 2 weeks. Is that correct, Lisa?
I'm not sure, Councilor Bacon. That's actually something I'd have to ask personnel. I'm really not, it depends. I think it's on a case-by-case basis. I don't know that there's anything in our ordinance that really addresses that specifically, but I'm happy to look into that.
So I guess my question would be, if the mayor already has flexibility and we don't have an ordinance, why do we need one? But anyway, I'll leave that as a rhetorical question.
Sorry.
That's
What did the
Councilor Rivera?
I guess for me is this like a best practice? Is this being done in other communities type of thing? And then for me is like, I just got off the phone the other day with someone in the school department about FMLA stuff, right? And paras and teachers don't necessarily get FMLA. And for me, it's like, it's hard for me to hear this piece when the FMLA piece in the school department is not necessarily like something that kind of makes me feel comfortable across the board. And I understand they're two different situations, but they're all city employees at the end of the day for me. And I don't know, is there another way to help mitigate the 10-day issue for someone if there's if they're a head of a department? Can we rewrite the ordinance, amend the ordinance to change it from 10 days to 12 to 15 days or something? I'm not sure if I'm totally sold on just like opening it up to that extent, but I could be convinced, I guess.
Thank you. Counselor Givner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm actually in favor of this because I think if you can negotiate, good for you. I think it's a good way to retain, to attract new talent. As we know, benefits are in lieu of pay oftentimes. So it is one way to offset the base salary. If we can only pay so much, we can, it's like paying someone because it's paid vacation. Right. So it's a nice way to give someone a lesser salary, since we tend to have to do that in Holyoke, but you give them this incentive, like, okay, you're still not gonna make as much as you might have made elsewhere, but at least we can give you the same vacation. Because, there are people who do wanna be here, and that might be the one thing that puts them right over the edge. So we get somebody who really wants to be here, we offset their salary with the vacation time, and what we need to make sure that anyone working around them understands is that they're really making the same, they're not getting more vacation, they're getting vacation in lieu of a additional salary. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I started a new job recently and I have more vacation than my peers, and it's because I refuse to take the job without more vacation because of the same reason. So.
Yep.
And I got it.
That's going to create.
And I got it, and I like it there because of that.
Good. Good for you. That's how we wheel and deal in life, right? That's the American way.
Councilor Jordan.
Yes. I'm intrigued by, in no event shall an employee receive greater than 5 weeks vacation upon hire. Really? I mean, I'm a senior executive in a private sector company. I get 4 weeks. So you can come in one of these positions and start off with 5 weeks? Really? I don't think so. That's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, the private sector is not getting 5 weeks vacation. So, I mean, this to me, okay, maybe you're going from 2 to 3, and it's like, okay, I'd like to get a list of what these Schedule A positions are, and we should have a conversation about how hard we're filling them and what the salaries are and everything else. I mean, this sounds like this is a little too much flexibility here. And maybe the question is, should some of these other positions be in the professional supervisors? Maybe the discussion about the MOA should be here in hand. But some of the rules that we have, I mean, I started off as a state employee. I was getting 2 weeks vacation, but there's no discretion about, this is totally discretionary. There is no criteria here. If the mayor likes you and says, yeah, you kind of did this and this, I'll give you 5 weeks. You over here, I don't really like you. You get 2 weeks. Have a nice day. There's no objective standard on vacation. And I know, like I said, when I started state government, when I was there, 2 weeks. That's what we got. That's what everybody did. And as far as people coming into the positions, you either take the job or you don't, and I'm going to have to learn more about how hard it is to fill, quote unquote, some of these jobs. I'm going to come back to another point, which is, just in my brief time back here, and I watched over the last 4 years, we have massively increased the pays, the scales, the benefits of a whole laundry list of positions. And let me say, the defined benefit retirement that we are giving out belies All this stuff you hear about, oh, you're radically underpaid to market. Most of the time, the answer is no, you're not. Because let me tell you something, defined benefit retirement pensions don't exist at all anymore in the private sector. The amount of money you would have to save in order to have a defined benefit retirement today is a massive sum of money. Just think, for example, if you were to make $50,000 a year and to get a pension of $40,000 a year. So if you got an 80% pension when you retire, that's $40,000 a year, assuming, and I'm keeping this simple because you do get pay raises over the years. $40,000 times 20 years, 25 years, or whatever you're in retirement, that's $1 million of additional compensation that a person in the private sector does not get. So it isn't just the 50 grand you got, it's also the lifetime check for $1 million that you also got. That would have had to have been contributed into a 401k plan or otherwise. So when you add that extra compensation on top of the $50,000 salary, that 50 isn't 50 anymore. So, you know, it's starting to get a little bit on deaf ears, all this bemoaning about how some of these positions are so radically underpaid and is not looking and not selling those benefits to prospective employees too. And the fact that these are 37-hour-a-week positions versus private sector, a department head, if you're exempt, you'll be working 45, 50 hours a week. That's another issue, okay? So, you know, I love how we single out one component. Oh, well, in the private sector, you'd get 4 weeks vacation. Over here, it's 2. You got to look at all of these things, is my only point, to make sure we're treating people fairly. And yes, I absolutely want us to be competitive. But these other things about the 37-hour work week and the number of holidays, how many holidays do we give up? Okay. Or, oh, I'm sorry, maybe it's only a 35-week work week. I must have exaggerated at 37. And then all of the lifetime retirement benefits, I think we need to look at all of those things too. When we're considering changing all of these type of policies and making sure that there is some level of uniformity among the employees. You go frequently into the private sector, especially around regular employees, there is a structured thing. 2 weeks, then 3 weeks after so much years, and then 4 weeks, and that's not. Here, we want to have a system that's just whatever the whim of the mayor is. I think you're great, you get 2 weeks. If I don't think you're great, whatever. If you're awesome, you get 5 weeks. So anyways, I think we need to do some more study on this question and to really see why are these quote unquote positions hard to fill. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Chair Bacon. I'd just like to weigh in. I'm in favor of the proposed language in front of us. It makes sense. When most of these positions, and there are not a lot of them, are not part of any kind of contractual agreement with the city in terms of a union or a professional association. Most of these positions are department heads, assistant department heads, and positions that stand by themselves. And we allow an appointing authority to look at the grade and the scale of the salary and start some of them at midterm according to experience. This is practice in the private sector. Let's not kid ourselves. The private sector is looking for someone that they need for their company. They will negotiate with whatever tools they have to get that person in the door. And I think the city is starting to realize we need to negotiate to get good quality people into positions that we have and to keep our government going strong and efficient. So the language makes sense. I put it on the appointing authority. In most cases, the mayor's going to have a big say on this, that they're going to look accordingly to the person's experience that they're trying to hire and accordingly adjust it to the vacation time to where they are in their particular careers. I mean, let's give a little bit of faith to the appointing authority, and let's try to get some more qualified people in the doors to perform the jobs that we have.
Thank you. Counselor Maldonado Velez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm like back and forth with this. Like, I'm probably most definitely going to vote yes on this simply because I think having the flexibility there, negotiating power, all that. But I just want to take it back to what I've said before and this whole idea of unlimited time off and where you're really focused on the individual. You know, what is their role, what is their job, and are they getting their job done? If they're not getting their job done, regardless of when they get it done, then that means they're not doing their job, and that's a conversation. So I just wanted to put that in there because I feel like that would avoid some of this conversation. And, you know, as we're talking about private sector and we're talking about, like, you know, forward thinking, like that is a place where we're getting to, you know, as more remote work becomes standard, where it's like really just based on the work that you're producing versus you having to be in a space. Now, I mean, there's clearly roles that have to be here, whether if you're, you know, managing a machine or whatever it is, then clearly you have to be here physically present. But I think I would love to have that conversation eventually, sooner rather than later, because I think that would be a huge draw to people to come into our city where, particularly my generation and younger, that means that our city is looking at employees and looking at people based on what they're able to do versus how much time can they spend in the office, which is not the determinant of productivity. But with that said, with this, like, I'm ready to say yes with the whole idea. Like, I wish we could take this a little further to really make people want to come work in our city and stay working in our city at all levels, not just if you have 20 years experience or whatever it may be. Thanks.
Thank you. Attorney Ball? I just saw your hand up, so
Yes, thank you. I just want, and I'm going to just finish up, but I want to respond to some of the things that I heard here tonight, just so, you know, everyone knows, like, where we're coming from on this. And this is not, like, just for, you know, the law department. This is really, I feel like this is the best thing we can do, you know, for the city in general, to help with the hiring, to help with, you know, getting qualified department heads. And I'll tell you, you know, it's on a case-by-case basis. No one in the city, I heard some of the arguments about people coming in and they're a new employee and they're gonna get more than somebody that's been there for 4 years. That is gonna happen, and it happens now. You know, not any employee in the city has the same benefits. Every union has different benefits. The ordinance employees have very few benefits compared to the union employees. But I will tell you that this vacation issue for the Professional Supervisors Association, it works. We have not had a problem. There has not been a problem that I'm aware of since that language has been in that contract. It has gotten us good employees. It's been very beneficial to have it. It has not been a problem that I'm aware of at all. I know there was also mention of, you know, putting some of us in the Professional Supervisors Association. That's just not possible. You know, our office does all the negotiations with the unions, and, you know, there's certainly other, you know, people that are on this schedule that have confidential information and supervise certain people, and they can't be in this union. There is a reason that they're on the ordinance schedule for Schedule A, so that's not a possibility. As far as the pay scales, I understand people have gotten raises lately. And certainly, the new Schedule A was done in 2021. But I just want to point out that salary study that this was based on was from 2014 and passed in 2021. We're already way behind, and I am happy to show you the numbers. The people that are at the bottom, and I should say the top, the grade 12, the grade 14. We are paying the lowest of all of the towns and cities that neighbor us, and I can show you because I've got it in writing. We are the lowest paid for the superintendent of public works, for city solicitor, for city auditor. A lot of these department heads, it's not as competitive And we need to do something about that. And I'm not suggesting at this point that we do anything about salaries, but this is something that we can do, because right now, as it is currently, I see 8 department heads that are on this schedule out of the 30 employees. But then just looking, because I can speak to my office, between myself and the 2 other lawyers that are there, we have a combined 70 years of experience. And all of us have 10 days of vacation, even with coming in with that many years of experience, many, many years of municipal experience. And that's just speaking to the people that I know in my office. But, as far as department heads go, there's 8. But I'm not sure that that's the fairest thing to do either. But this language that we used, we really kind of mirrored what's in the professional supervisor's contract. I didn't take all of it, but I used some of it because it works. And, that's the reason that we use this particular language, not, that's what's in the professional supervisors right now, that, no one should receive, greater than 5 weeks. I don't know what the mayor does, and, I'm sure he negotiates when somebody's asking for a certain amount. Well, how about this amount? But this at least caps it. But just looking for something here to help with, hiring people and retaining some of the people, because we're losing department heads, and, it's important for the city to move forward in a positive way, to keep we've got to keep our department heads. It's how we keep the city functioning.
So, Attorney Ball, under Section A, is that language out of the professional supervisors union? Because to me, it's very vague.
Yeah,
Is that the language that is taken from the professional supervisors union?
It is, yes.
It's like, I don't even know what it means when I read it. Because it talks about cumulative and continuous, but 3 prior positions, which sort of argues against continuous. It's just very vague. I don't know. I mean, I'm for having flexibility, but it just seems so vague. And if the mayor is already making agreements with people that exceed the 2 weeks when he's bringing them in, it seems like he has that authority as the hiring authority to do it anyway.
Only for the professional for somebody that's in that union, not somebody
Oh,
that
he
he's
can't-
hiring. That's,
oh, he can't do it on
the
Schedule
ordinance
A?
schedule, he cannot.
Oh, okay. So can you do us a favor? I think we just need to give this a little bit more thought, and I think maybe if we can have a little bit more information. And I know we've had this information before, so I'm not saying we've never had it. But could you just recirculate out to us the Schedule A again?
Yes.
I mean, I know we've had it, so I'm not trying to imply that we haven't. It's just we do get buried in a lot of paper. And so if we could have that again, that would be helpful. And just for myself, I would throw out that we cap C at 4 instead of 5, and that in A, we say something about a cumulative years of the same level of experience, of at least X number of years of relevant, applicable experience, so you get away from somebody just likes somebody, and what can you say about them from a performance thing that makes the case, if you will, right? So I'm thinking if there's people that we need to make these deals with, they've got at least 10 years at the senior level or at whatever level they're trying to come in at to bring to the table, 5 to 10, say, And so we should be able to put some baseline in there that if somebody brings this, then that's all. But that's just me. And you've heard a whole bunch of different feedback. But if you could provide us with that and just maybe think about a little clarification language in A that doesn't take away the flexibility but gives some kind of a marker. I don't know.
I have another
I don't know if I'm
information.
capturing the sense of the committee, but
I agree.
that's a question I have for consideration. Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, I would also like to know, when you give us the Schedule A on the next column, could you also tell us how many weeks of vacation all the people that are currently in those positions have?
Because what are we talking about, 30 people?
Allegedly.
Yeah.
And what's the current number of weeks? And then what's the salary per week for each of those positions so that we can have the financial impact of this request? I think the taxpayers have a right to know how much we're being asked to spend by creating this, too. We need to be transparent because this is another ask from government for more. And, you know, John Q. Public, you know, are they all getting 4 weeks? You know? And so I just want to make sure that we're basically saying that there's a discretionary vacation policy now, that anybody you come in, you could be given 4 weeks based on some nebulous criteria about cumulative years of continuous employment deemed relevant to the scope of the proposed employment, whatever that means. And that's totally subjective.
So what I'd like to do is entertain a motion to table, and I'd
Get this
like
further information.
to ask, you know, for the further information, Attorney Ball, and I think you're hearing a lot of positive feedback in terms of moving forward with it, maybe just in a little different form.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, and if it'll be helpful, I think, you know, along those lines of what Councilor Jordan is bringing up about the cost, I'd like to send you along the study that we've been doing about what other communities are paying these same positions, because I think that would be helpful to be able to see that as well.
That's fair, sure.
Yeah. And make sure to include the ones that pay less, not just the ones that pay more, as we typically get.
If they exist, Counselor, I will send them, but I'm not really seeing them, to be honest. But if they're out there, I'm going to give you everything I have.
Right, and then can we also include the comparison to the private sector jobs?
Well, we're
doing the same, because I want to compare work week, number of hours worked, and have that prorated, and then if we could also add in the pension benefit too, and have that monetized. Because if we're going to have a cry for me Argentina about the pay, I'd like to make sure that all the money that is being paid is accounted for. You know, we have to have, if we're going to do a sincere analysis, and I'm open to do that, we need to not have these conversations that only focus on one component at a time and say, oh my God, this is outrageous, when we're not looking at the total compensation package. That's a key point that I want to make, so that we're doing true comparison. That's all I'm asking for, is fair. And I want everyone to be absolutely fairly competitive and paid correctly, but let's put it all out there on the table.
Yeah, and I do think that our HR department can give us the cost of a job, the salary, and then what the percent of the benefits is to cost out the positions. Counselor McGivern.
Thank you, Chair Bacon. And along the same lines, could you ask the city solicitor how many hours she's worked today for the city?
Counselor GIVNER.
Thank you, Counselor Bacon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I work more.
I just wanted to add that I don't always think it's fair to compare. I think comparing salaries to the municipalities around us, I think is fair. I don't always think it's fair to compare it to the private sector, because it's like apples and oranges, and the people taking these jobs have that, you know, government experience, and they expect to get those types of jobs. So I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm curious about the comparison, but I don't think it's like, I don't think we can use that data really to then make decisions to pay people, because if it comes out to be more, then it's going to be really bad.
No, that's okay. I mean, maybe that's the answer, but what I'm suggesting is, since all you hear lately, and I guess why I'm a little more sensitive to it, is the fact that there's this steady drumbeat about how bad off a number of these department heads are, apparently. And what I'm suggesting is, let's look at total compensation. And all I'm saying is compare it, number of work hours, working conditions, vacation, retirement, all of this stuff that we have to compare. And yes, because a person says, hey, I could have this job at this company, I could come work for Holyoke, I could come work for Worcester, whatever, and that's what you're compared against. And let's do the analysis.
Real quick.
Councilor Rivera, yes.
Is there a place, and this is probably separate, but is there a place to find where, like, across departments, like, stuff, that information, like how much people are getting paid and like vacation time, all that stuff?
So our HR department.
Just like, I mean, but like, would it include like water, fire, police, school?
For our city?
Yeah, for the whole city overall. Yeah. Okay.
It's available. I don't know how much work it is to pull it together. I mean, I don't know.
That's what I meant. Is it all pulled together? Yeah.
Capacity.
So that way, you know what I mean? So that way, when you're looking across departments, you're seeing who's getting more and who's not.
Right.
Exactly.
With regards to with packages and deals and all the other stuff. Because if we're going to talk equitability across the city, then you actually have to be equitable for the whole city, not just certain departments.
Right. But I think,
That's
I'm
right.
not sure at this point how well utilized our computer systems are, so I'm not sure how accessible it is for the HR director to sit there and just plunk that out.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that part, but yeah, it's there somewhere.
Well, and this is also raising another good point that, as Councilor Rivera is correct, you have some departments, why I've been an advocate for increasing the pay of like DPW workers, for example. They have been in one of the less quote unquote powerful unions and less powerful positions, so they haven't gotten anywhere near the type of pay they've deserved. Versus it seems like you've got other departments where a whole host of people are making $250,000 a year. It doesn't seem like there's equity within. And then I hear these other things about, woe for me, when really, when you look at it, it's not really that bad off. And there needs to be a broader conversation, so we're being fair to everybody. Thank you.
Well, I think we've had a really good discussion here, and if we just get a little more information, and if we can get maybe just a little bit more definition under A, then, and we could, I think, move it maybe at our next meeting, which right now the only
Motion to
set date
table?
is September 27th. All in favor? Aye. I know. That's why I never bet on how long.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 12, that the city council create an ordinance that creates food truck zones in the city with the goal of eliminating food deserts, managing the locations, and promoting various neighborhoods. Now, if the committee will bear with me, I just want to check out with, and I think we still have Attorney Dagnan with us.
Yes.
So Attorney Dagnan, can we do this by ordinance, or are we tripping into zoning? I'm
Yeah,
just
that's a
trying to
very
figure
good
out if we have to
question.
do a hearing.
Yeah, that's a very good question. In my opinion, we're tripping into zoning, because what we're doing is we're we're creating zones. I think that's, food truck zones. So we're really indicating what's going to happen where. And that really is more along the lines of zoning ordinance, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. It's a fair potential reading of it. I think Kathy could be onto it. I will say what the goal is, we allow these food trucks, and the question is, and I think what we need to examine is, what section of the law, and I have to say I haven't read that section in some time, that is allowing us to grant the permits for these food trucks. Because what we're essentially trying to say is, we want to restrict where we're putting the food trucks in town because of a number of reasons. But most of all is we want to help certain areas of the community that have a shortage of availability to good food in them for the residents. And so we're trying to create more food equity in these areas and access to eliminate food deserts, which is, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of a number of people that live in Holyoke, is a real problem, access to good food, particularly in the downtown. Meanwhile, we can serve the economic advantages, promoting certain neighborhoods to draw as an attraction to Ward 1 or Ward 2 or Ward 4 or what have you, more people to come, and also make sure there's sufficient parking and there's, good access in and out and doing that. And I know in a number of cities, they do this. I think of New Haven in particular, down along the waterway in New Haven. You go there on the weekends, it is all lined with one big long line of food trucks. And that would be really cool if we could do something like that in Holyoke, so that, we could really, create something special. So if we have to do it by zoning or ordinances on how we're granting, right now, it's just sort of, hey, I'm Joe Banana, I'd like to have a food truck, I want to go here, give me a permit, yes or no. And this is all happenstance. And I know it isn't the primary reason I'm in it, but I am sensitive to those that do have brick and mortar restaurants saying, hey, is this really fair to me? Like, I'm investing all this money and then you're going to plop a food truck across the street from me. Like, they don't have any of my cost structure or taxes and all this stuff. This isn't right. What incentive is for me to have a real restaurant when I could just run around with a food truck and have those costs? So it's a fair criticism. So we're trying to do the right thing. Whatever the best way to do that, I'm totally open to that.
Councilor Rivera. Oh, no? Councilor Givner.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering if it does sound like it's zoning, which obviously I don't know, but if we could create food truck zones, it would be nice to kind of holistically look at it citywide and figure out different areas that are almost like food truck parking or something, where we can just set designated areas. It could be any number of places, different neighborhoods, at some of the parks, plazas, yeah. Yeah, and it could have time restraints but I think it's a really great idea. So I don't know how we move it forward to get that information. Do we have to go through the planning department? Or the planning board?
I think we will, but Councilor Maldonado Velez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I signed on to this, and this was our, when was this from? It was from one of our conversations we had here around some food trucks, because I drive into Holyoke, I'm sure that I see 5 food trucks coming in, and we've only seen one come in to get permitted. So that's that was part of this conversation here. So, when I signed on to this, it wasn't necessarily to just have a food truck zone, and that's the only place where food trucks would be allowed, but also, and the conversation would be with the Board of Health, I guess, where it's who are the food trucks that are allowed in our city, and being very clear. And I think this has been a question from some of the organizing groups that I'm in for different events, even from the food trucks themselves, being really clear about what the city rules are around food trucks, around food vendors being outside cooking. So we're not, I didn't expect to decide on anything with this today, but one last thing I want to say is this would definitely be a zone, because I'm envisioning, I guess, some sort of, I don't know if it's an overlay district, is that what we call it? Or, yeah, so I don't know what it is, but there's also this other component, which would be ordinance, where we can talk about where it's something where food trucks cannot set up within 100 feet from a brick and mortar or something like that. And that would be separate from zone. Okay. But that's not this one. I just wanted to put that in there, or with that.
Well, and if I could say, when the people come in as item 1, for the street vendor license, really all we're licensing is where it goes. we, as the committee that's recommending to the council, could already say that.
No.
We could already say, you can be on this street, but you have to be 100 feet from that place. We could already do that. Because we're approving location. Board of Health is approving all the health permits and all that.
Okay.
I just,
We're just doing location.
If I may.
Councilor Rivera, yep.
So that I didn't get to sign on to this order, but I think the order is pretty awesome. It may get into zoning, and if we do have to meet with the planning board or whomever it is for it to go through and just hash out the details, I think it's worth it. Just because to add to a lot of what you guys are saying, like it will allow easier access for us to like spur economic growth, not just for the person that owns the truck, but like for a particular community upon itself. So like for example, when they have the softball games at Kelly School, there's a huge crowd that comes. Who's to say that you can't line up 5 or 6 food trucks along the field there?
Now, see, that's
right.
a different idea. Now,
So,
Attorney
like,
Dagnan,
doing
if I
different
can,
zonings.
I just want to ask her about that because to me, that is an ordinance issue. So, Attorney Dagnan, if in the example of what Councilor Rivera is saying, there's an activity going on, and we want to offer at the activity the opportunity for the food trucks to be there, that to me would not be a zone change.
Well, to me,
That-
it's just
that would be
identifying, like, if you looked at the map, the same way you do zoning, you get to look at where you can park your truck at.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But in
yeah,
the
I get what you're saying,
instance
too.
of an activity that's already going on, and could food trucks be there, i.e. the parade?
Yeah.
We don't have a zone for the food trucks to be at a parade, right? So could we, through ordinance, set up locations attached to events in the way that Council Rivera is describing without
Like a one-day license
without
versus a
having
permanent
to do
location.
a zone,
Yeah.
a big fancy zone thing?
So
Yeah, and I just heard it correct, and yeah, when you're talking about something that specific, and it happens all the time, where municipalities will give a one-day license to do something for a specific event.
that's much
In that situation, I think that can be an ordinance, and it wouldn't, it would not give rise to a zoning issue. The reason why I indicated zoning before is because in the framework of that order, and I think it's a good idea because I think I've heard you all say that you want to protect the brick and mortar restaurants as well, who might get a little upset if we're allowing people in downtown Holyoke or wherever, to set up food trucks. But in answer to your question, yeah, I think if we word it that way, like a one-day food truck license, I think that's fine. I think that can be a regular ordinance. I'm distinguishing between that and some place where, hey, we're going to allow you to be here all the time. You have to, we have to flesh this out through planning, and this is where your location's going to be. So I think there might be 2 separate issues that we're talking about here.
All right.
2 separate issues.
Counselor Maldonado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so definitely 2 separate issues where, so like if there's an event happening and the event festival decides to have food trucks at the event, that's one thing where the food trucks they still have to go to the city for the one-day permit to make sure that they're okay. They still have to go to the fire department. They have to go through all that. So that process is there. But what can happen and what may happen is you have street vendors that are not licensed in particular locations around the event, but they will still set up shop around the event because it's the event is there. And then based on the conversation we had with some of the vendors, and that's something that I had to do during Pride, where she's like, oh, I spoke with the Board of Health, it's fine, I can be here as long as I'm not in the event. And the conversation there was like, these food vendors paid a fee to vend for the people of this event. You, even though you do have a license in Holyoke, you're not licensed in this particular area, but it's not really clear as to like, if there's an event happening, well, why can't I just show up at that event?
Right.
So that's, again, I think it's definitely separate issues, definitely conversation around enforcement, compliance,
That's an
and like
enforcement issue in that.
all that.
Exactly.
But I think it's the point of entry for food trucks is very, very low compared to like the brick and mortar. As I said, I think Crave started as a food truck and then they became a brick and mortar. So like, that's a way in, but we want to protect the people. We also, I think the idea of like having certain zones to really like, talking about tourism and like, bringing people, putting it up and, making it a bigger deal, fine. But there is I think the conversation we've been having since day one here, compliance, enforcement, and what does that look like? And it's going to be item 13 next, so.
So what is the will of the committee in this regard?
Maybe we can collect our thoughts and share them with the law department, and then maybe Kathy, you could draft it into something or help us with, if it does, for the component that needs to go through zoning, that we begin that process or we draft that correctly, working with you. What do you recommend, Kathy, on next steps? I think you've heard the discussion. Where do you see this going next to keep it moving?
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. In terms of, I think there should be a discussion with the planning board if we're talking about food truck zones and where, kind of get a feel from, their perspective about, is this something that, they, what is their input on that, I guess is what I'm saying. For the one-day license kind of a deal, or for the event, that is an ordinance that I can draft. But I would love the opportunity, I'm certainly willing to work with you. And if this body, like you said, collects their thoughts and gets some ideas about what they want, we can work it through. We can do them two separate issues. And I would go to the planning board with respect to the zoning one. So does that make sense?
So if we're going to go to the planning board, then we have to ask Jeffrey to advertise, and we have to do it as a public hearing. I mean, we can't just ad hoc go to the planning board. So
agreed.
we'll have to put it into the formal process.
Okay.
So we'll ask Jeffrey then to advertise and fit it into our schedule going forward.
Good.
Relative to creating the zone.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
And in the and I don't know if there's an ordinance that you want to have created to try to control for the people that don't get the day license, but I don't know what it would be.
We should probably have.
I just have to check in with the Board of Health. So there's that's the question in the air. So it goes to the fire department, Board of Health.
Should be code enforcement. Like if you're at an event and somebody's there that shouldn't be there. Well, there is a code enforcement officer.
So yes.
Housed with the Board of Health.
I'm sure. So I know from the events happening, the two events that we've had planned, we have the Board of Health and the fire department come in the day before the event and make sure everything is all set and ready to go.
Right.
But they still have to go through the whole. Yeah, I think this is fine with the zoning, and then I think if we wanted to talk about the 1 day or the buffer, I think it's another conversation that I still need to be having with Sean as well.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Great, then. So on this item, then, we will table it to advertise for a public hearing.
Sounds good. Motion to table to advertise.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to remove item 13 from the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 13, from AACO Realty Corporation, a letter regarding 380 Dwight Street, Holyoke 420 LLC. Failure to enforce city ordinances complaint. So we all have a copy of the letter of the complaint. So I'm going to make a couple of introductory remarks. Number one, we are an ordinance committee. We are not a hearing committee for a complaint, okay? But each member of the committee has received a copy of the complaint that came through the city council, and we have received correspondence and notifications and updates from the marijuana company relative to that complaint. And we understand that there are some legal matters going on. Okay? So tonight, we are not going to hear your arguments against each other. But do know that we have received all of your documentation, your arguments, and your counterpoints. But this is what I will say. We are the recommending body to the city council relative to special permits. Special permits are subject to compliance with the special permit. A complaint that is filed that indicates that a change occurred relative to the special permit that was granted. And I'm not going to get into any discussion about every little detail of the special permit or everything that was right or some things that may have been wrong, because I think there's plenty to go around. But I will say this, if there has been a change in use of the space, if there has been a change to the space, if there has been a change in hours, if there has been a change in any of the things that were approved and the conditions that were put on the special permit, then the marijuana company who has the special permit has to take the initiative to come in to amend their special permit. To the extent that a landlord can say and document and show that the conditions of a lease were changed, something is different is happening, it is on the marijuana company to come to the city to apply for an amendment to their special permit. And I will say, we have had recently at least 2 companies come in and do that very thing. And just to give an example, for fairly small things in the big picture of the world, what was one? Changing their entrance. What was another? Moving their sally port, okay? So it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be a momentous change. But if you are changing it, and if the lease that you provided, something is different than what was provided, then the amendment to a special permit needs to come in to this committee. Now, if there's a situation or a condition in your circumstance that is not covered by what I just said, I will let the committee hear if there's anything that makes the words I said not understandable for either party.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Tom Lesser. I represent the landlord in this case, who's the owner of 380 Holyoke. I'm sorry, of 380 Dwight Street. Now, my client may be old school, but they believe that if, in fact, a Holyoke ordinance or special permit is being violated, the ordinance or special permit should be enforced. And we're here tonight just for 2 reasons, not because of any dispute between the parties. The first is that the tenant is violating the Holyoke bylaws with regard to signs. They have too many sandwich signs, they have too many flag signs, they have a sale sign which requires a special permit. We don't think there's any dispute about that. They haven't suggested there's a dispute about that. All they've said is that their neighbor is doing that also. We're only here to get some guidance on how to get someone to enforce the Holyoke sign bylaw, which is being violated. And that's all we're asking. Okay? When there's a violation, there must be a place to go to get it enforced, and I don't think there's any dispute. There's just a violation, and they were sent here by the city council to discuss it, and that's why I've been here for the last hour and a half or 2 hours to bring this up.
Yes, and so the reason that it got sent to the city council was because I was supportive for the complaint to be forwarded to us, because my understanding was that the building commissioner who is in the marijuana ordinance, the responsible person for compliance in the building ordinance, I was led to understand that the building commissioner has not caused this person or this company to come into compliance. So I wanted our committee to have the complaint, and also the company that had the complaint about them sent us various information, because I want this committee through our legal department to tell our building commissioner to go and cause the enforcement that is his duty.
Well, God bless you for that.
That is what I want to have happen.
That's what we want to have happen too, okay?
So I wanted it to come to a committee so that it didn't just get buried. Because my feeling is we've been talking about things in terms of employees and things being equitable and fair, da-da-da-da. The same thing goes for the special permits. If most of the people are doing it correctly, they make a change, they come in, that's how it should be. So then if something's happening that isn't doing that, because the whole thing of no signs has been a thing from the get-go, then the people who have that responsibility just need to go and do it. And Attorney Degnan?
Yes.
If the building commissioner reports to us and you and the mayor that he cannot go out and enforce, my understanding is that the legal department can assist the building commissioner in the enforcement matter?
Yes. I mean, for example, if we're bringing this person to court, for example, for the purposes of code enforcement, usually it would start out with a letter. But yeah, the law department can, in my opinion, we can assist to see, talk with them and see what his side of it is, and move from there.
Okay, and certainly I'm not, the one-person show here. We're a committee, and I will definitely defer to feedback and input from the committee, but I just want to make it clear that we are not a hearing committee for compliance. But we can ask you to coordinate with the building commissioner to cause the special permit holder to comply with the special permit.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
particularly to get the ball rolling. Yes.
Right. And so can we make that as a motion and a formal request to you and the building commissioner through you tonight?
Yeah, you can do that. Refer it to the law department and to the building commissioner, and that's when the law department can have the conversation, start the communication, and report back. Because right now we don't have any, at least that I know of, we don't have any facts with respect to this issue, but we can certainly get them and move from there. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
And
So
if you could include the sign ordinance in that also, and we're happy to send you pictures of the signs that are in violation. It's not rocket science.
Right. So, committee members, what is your desire in this regard? Legal's informed us as to what we could do tonight relative to compliance and enforcement. Hang on, I'll hear from.
Yeah.
No, you'll
We
be
weren't
able
necessarily
to,
gonna
you'll be
make a
able to be
decision.
heard, but I'm just asking them on process relative to, but yes, you can be heard. Councilor Rivera.
I guess for me, thank you for bringing it through here, even though it shouldn't really come through here. But at least if the complaint is not falling on deaf ears, whether it's valid or not, that's not my situation.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if they made a complaint and no one is doing anything to move it forward, at least we're hearing it, and hopefully it's documented, and then later on down the road, somebody does something about it. Now, again, for you in the back, that this is not to favor him or anyone in general overall. It's just in general, like if there's any complaint put forward, it should actually be entertained, and someone should go out and check it out just to see if it's real. Yeah, and I'm not picking any favorites or speaking in favor of anyone. And then the other piece I would ask is that they check the other sign too, just in case, because if you're gonna do one, you got to do everyone, right? Like.
Well, in fairness, like a code enforcement officer will respond to a complaint. They're not going to go do an audit.
So they don't just drive around and
They're not
check
going
to
to
make sure?
go do an audit,
Okay.
but.
That's news to me. I didn't know that.
Well,
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know they didn't go around and just.
well, I'm not saying they couldn't.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying they couldn't. I'm just saying typically as a practical matter. I'm not trying to say that. So yes, so
I have a point.
I think I'll let him just.
Well, hold on, we're having the round robin here on process.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
On process, yes.
Yes,
Go
on
ahead,
process.
Councilor Jordan.
Yeah. The first thing I'll point out is, I'd like to just quote one section of the complaint, and it's not into the merits of it, but it just says on process, in accordance with city ordinance, we complied and submitted the attached notices of violation to the building commissioner, Damian Cody. We were surprised and astonished to be informed by Commissioner Cody that no action would be taken to address these serious violations due to lack of staff. Boy, that sounds like a standing thing that I just filed an order about that exact same issue that I literally hear that. So I just wanted to say that's, you remember those little buttons you could buy at Staples? You know, that was easy. Well, I'm going to have to get one of those buttons that just says I have no staff, because we need to get one of those, because I'm literally hearing this. This is just another example of another person saying they're basically turned away by the building department whenever they have a concern. This isn't just Mr. Jarvis and their organization. I literally hear that from citizens all over, which prompted an order that I filed. And that stood out to me like, here you go again. We've got a serious problem in that department that people, whether these concerns are meritorious or, whatever, people have a right in their community to make their concerns heard and have their concerns properly investigated and reviewed. It's basic due process, and we are not doing that. We're taking money from marijuana people, pro, con, all these people are paying taxes, and we're not providing basic services. Come on. Okay. Now, I don't know if I'm taking exception or not, but on the process itself, we're going around here handing out permits to people to run various facilities, marijuana facility. This gentleman who I'm about to meet momentarily, I'm sure is a lovely man. And people have a right when we're giving out these permits and we're adding all these conditions and it says you're going to follow all these various rules. If somebody says, hey, you know that guy you gave a permit to? They're not following XYZ rule. They have a right to come in and tell the permit grantor somebody's not doing something that they said you were going to do. So I think as we're maturing with marijuana, or as it is with other things, we're just doling these permits out. And I also raised another thing, which is we should be using some of the impact money to actually hire people to go around and check out. It says, hey, you know what? You said you were going to do X, Y, and Z. Is actually X, Y, and Z actually happening?
And your order's in.
And I have that order in, and I believe we adopted it to go do that and start spending this. So those folks should be the boots on the ground to go hear from the Mark Jarvises of the world and listen to you and treat your concerns with respect, and then say, you know what, we invest, and then go talk to the person who you're complaining about and sit down with you and say, you know what, I got this complaint from, Joe Schmo, and this is what they're saying, and this is what my observations are. You've got 30 days to clean this up, or this has no finding, or whatever. But we've sort of like circumvented that whole process. We got lawyers involved. We've got building department saying, don't call us, we'll call you. Yeah. And now we're here. But I just feel like, we need to have an opportunity for folks like these two gentlemen, to come in and say, I've got concerns about a permit you gave out and something's not happening. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to handle that. We can't just say we're washing our hands of it. Go see the building department.
We're the permitting authority.
Because that's not due process either. So I said my piece on process. Love to hear what everyone has to say. Thank you.
Right. So we have heard from AACO Realty Corp. And so now we will hear from Holyoke 420 LLC.
Thank you very much, and first things, thank you for all your service that you guys do. I've been involved with the city for many years. I lived on 33 Carroll Lane, and oh my God, I'm tired, and you guys do this over and over and over and over and over again. So I have a quick handout that I would like just to hand in to you guys, if I may. I don't know, a matter of... Really? Thank
Oh,
you.
is that the letter from the law office?
No, it's the back. I just.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I was gonna say,
I really just, I'm going to talk about something that has not, that, like you said, we're going to stay away from the topic, as Madam Chair
Right, we
said.
can't get into
No,
the-
100%.
Okay.
I really just want you to go back to the end, because I don't think for first thing, 100% agreement. First thing about the signage, and why I didn't want you guys to talk about it, it's not so simple, because, and not to get into it, but one of those signs is on property that we rent from AACO. It's literally our property. So if you don't have somebody investigate, it's not just as simple as, oh, there's a sign.
Well, okay, but we're not going to get
No,
into
no,
the
we
weeds.
need a commissioner.
But with signs, it is simple, because every special permit says no signs.
No, that is not a condition of our permit that I've ever seen. Ever.
So I would when you got your permit, because it was probably long before my term. But during my term, since January, all the ones we've approved, they all have a signage restriction. Since January, and I've only been here since January.
But the bottom line is,
anytime before that,
this complaint came in, and like you understand, it's a lawsuit, and it goes on and on and on. I'm not going to waste your time.
Right.
But I 100%, till now, as we stand here, myself as the owner, 90%, and Lisa, we have not got one complaint, not from the landlord in writing about the signage, and not from the city. We found out about this complaint that we were not supposed to find out last Thursday by mistake. Okay, so you have to understand what they're trying to do in this.
Well, right. And I just want you to understand what we are doing.
100%.
Okay,
We
so
love the city.
what we are doing in our best effort here is causing the city departments to do what they should have done long before you guys all wrote a 20-page book.
Please. No, please, because we have...
That's all we're trying to do here.
We have issues all the time in the city with other people putting tents up and stuff that's 100% not legal from the CCC point of view, and there's nobody to talk to. So please, anything we can help. The building commissioner, the fire department, the police are all welcome in our house anytime. Thank you, and we will comply with every ordinance that is brought up to this table. So please let me just give you my little spiel, because let's give you guys some pleasant stuff, okay? Holyoke Cannabis employs 27 people. We have from all categories of people, and 12 of them live in Holyoke. Our special permit requires 30%. We have 40% of Holyoke residents work for us. This is in the back page. If you notice the donation page, we have done, I can't, from anywhere from the Ronald McDonald, we just had the Puerto Rican event we sponsored. We're very, very active in the community and putting our monies where our mouth are. And we also actually spend time. So over $10,000 in charitable, over half of them goes directly to Holyoke. Since we've been in business, we've used adult use tax. We've given the city $1,378,000. Local excess tax, we've given $384,000. It's on the last 4 pages. Sales tax, $801,000. And bottom line is we've given in taxes $2,571,000 that comes indirectly to the city. So just kind of some good news of good stuff we're doing. On the back of that profile, the last few pages, and it does show some of CANA provision signs, so I would love compliance. Let's have compliance. Let's get rid of all the signs. Let's do it. But let's do it. Let's not find a surprise on Thursday that somebody's trying to manipulate a group of people to close us down. That's not what I'm in business here. But one of the things that I really, really wanted to bring up to your attention is I just sat here on item 4 and listened to the conditions for this particular, and what was condition number 1, Madam Chair? Can you please let me know?
Jeffrey read them.
All right, I'll tell you what it was.
I did-
It says that the landlord needs to pay their taxes as a condition. So please go to the last page, the last two pages. In the last 4 years that I've been a tenant, AACO, not once since July 1st, 2019, has ever paid one quarterly tax on time. So somebody used the word chutzpah. I think it's chutzpah to bring this committee that chairs the city, that looks at budgets, and can complain about not getting services. Thank you very much for your time, and I will stop. But
Thank you. So here's the thing. The conditions that we put on a special permit are conditions that apply to the holder of the special permit.
No, I understand it's in a violation when they don't pay my taxes.
The condition.
I understand it's a problem.
No.
I get it.
You are not the owner of the property.
Yeah, but it's my condition. They don't pay it, I'm in violation.
No.
You want to know what I'm scared of?
No,
I'm not paying their taxes.
No, that is not correct.
Thank you.
You are only, that condition applies to you if you are the business and you own the property. That's when it applies. The conditions are standard, and some of the conditions apply. Many of the people who hold a special permit own the property. If you do not own the property, then you have to show us that you have control over the space in which you're doing your business. Where the special permit kicks in is if the amount of space you're using has changed from what you told us it was and what the lease says it is, then you need to come back to us and amend your special permit.
100%, madam,
That's the
and
way
I
that works.
appreciate it. And
Well-
now that we know that, we've done everything.
Well, hold on.
It sounds like we
If I
missed
may, I actually like to clarify because it doesn't say you have to pay your taxes. Condition 1 says you have to pay the commercial tax rate. That's a big difference. It says here, let me read it to you.
Oh, okay.
That the
Either way,
owner.
They still haven't paid their taxes on time.
All right.
Well, but
That the owner of the building always pay the commercial property tax rate to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local law for the duration of the special permit.
Thank
so
you
you
for
can't make it
clarification.
nonprofit.
Good. That makes me comfort because if it was up to them paying my taxes, I would have a lot of
But
problems.
no.
Thank you.
So the goal here for both parties involved and our attorney from the city has indicated to us tonight that we are proper to take a vote in this committee to ask legal to coordinate with the building commissioner to follow up on the complaint.
Thank you, ma'am.
Which is
One
what
last point.
I think the committee is with me to do.
Yes.
Now,
Just one more point.
once we do that, then it's going to get on its own path, and at some point, something will come back to us. If at the end of the day, this is like, at the end of the day, worst case scenario, the special permit is out of compliance and the business owner will do nothing to come in and amend the special permit, then it would be up to this committee to recommend to the city council to yank the special permit.
I understand, madam, 100%,
But-
but like I said, we haven't had any of this, and the second we have the clarification from the commission and what we need to do, because we're not admitting anything they're saying, you have to.
And
that's
I'm
just
not
that's just
asking
saying it.
anything
We
that
will
anybody is saying.
comply, and it's 100%, but to leave, the last thing I just want to leave you guys in understanding is, in my lease that I don't expect you guys to read, the landlords receive 2% of my profits, so pause for a second to think, why are they trying to close me down? Thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Counselor Givner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank you guys for hanging out, and I'm sorry you had to go through this. It's pretty embarrassing that we are understaffed as a city and that your complaints haven't been answered. So I think it's awful that you had to come in here and voice your concerns to us. And like Chair Bacon and we've all pretty much agreed, we will do our best to make sure that there is more compliance. I don't know how many of these meetings you watch, but compliance comes up a lot. And it is at the front of all of our minds. We need street painting from DPW, understaffed. We have trash pickup late, understaffed. We have building code violations due to understaffing. You know, you just heard our attorney Ball talking about incentives for hiring people so that we are less understaffed. So I really appreciate your patience, and I'm really sorry you had to come in here, and I want you to know that we are doing our very, very best to address all these concerns because they're valid. So
We
thank
really
you.
appreciate the committee doing that, and all we want is enforcement, that's all.
Right.
If there's a violation, we want enforcement. If there's no violation, we want no enforcement. And if it's violation of the neighbors, shut them down, shut those flags down too, shut those signs down too. All we want is enforcement of the signage bylaws and the special permit, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, and we, for our part, appreciate everybody who's a business owner, a building owner that's trying to build business in Holyoke. And we have been very productive in terms of moving special permits through to try to cause that to happen for the people that want to do business and for the city. But there does come a time where you have so much of something going on where you've got to really make sure that it's going along the way that it's intended. And so I think we're having some growing pains too. We are the city in the state that has approved the most special permits for marijuana. So I think at this point, we're having some growing pains. But my goal is to just restart at the right place before we get to the end of the road. Let's start at the beginning of the road. You know, and I hope you can avoid a whole bunch of court stuff and just get it resolved, but that's between you.
That's great, and
But-
and we appreciate your taking some steps, because without you, we were kind of lost.
All right, well, and good luck to all of you.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
So I'll entertain a motion to
I believe it was to refer it to the law department,
coordinate with
with the
building commissioner.
building commissioner to investigate these matters and report back to the committee.
Second.
Their findings.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the attorney is on the Zoom with us. She has heard all of this, and she has indicated that she will follow up as part of our vote tonight.
And we could make sure that these two entities will be invited if we have a future meeting. You should both be invited to come back and hear what the outcome of all that is.
Yep.
Greatly appreciate it. Like I said, we barely found out about this on
Yeah.
Thursday.
Okay,
Good.
all right.
All right.
Take up the last, 15. Motion to take up item 15.
All
There
in
you go.
favor?
Second.
Aye. Item 15, that an ordinance be created that requires a department head to report with an incident report explaining the cause, any loss in their department over $250 in value of the to the city council and the mayor within 30 days. Just a little editorial friendly comment.
Yeah.
Usually materials over 500, but,
I think 250 is valid. We're broke.
okay. But I'm just,
You say it again, cocaine. All right. I love it. I love it. That's it.
all right.
So,
right.
so basically, the nutshell of this is, if there's either a theft, somebody crashes something, or somebody damages something, and there's a loss. Number one, we're self-insured, so this is all coming out of our pocket. I think that should be, I want that to be reported to us if something either goes missing, or there's any kind of concern. It should be reported to the city council and the mayor, with the incident report of what the heck happened. You know, all of a sudden, $1,000 piece of equipment goes MIA, or somebody damaged something that cost $5,000. You know, I want to have an incident report that says this happened, and then we can look into it and say, why did that happen? And so that's kind of where I'm going with this, and it's just to have some transparency about these, because otherwise, right now, somebody could lose $5,000, By the way, we've had departments, and I didn't want to really go here.
No.
But I will say we've had some departments where money has gone heavy duty missing, and we didn't find out about it until either we're reading about it in the paper, or the IG's office is involved, or some of that, where, oh, well, that was, yeah, we know about it internally, but no, the city council doesn't know, or the mayor doesn't maybe know. So I would like to create an ordinance where these type of losses are being reported to the mayor and the city council, and then, you know what?
To finance.
We can just figure it out, and then we can look into it in finance, or we'll say, yeah, okay, these things happen, no big deal, and then we move on. But
And our auditor's department can provide claims and damages report very easily.
Go ahead.
assuming it's reported.
Well, to get something fixed or replaced, you'd have to do something.
Thank you,
Council
Madam
GIVNER.
Chair. I just had a question about that. I think it's a good idea to have accountability through action that requires inventory. Who keeps that? Do we have it? I think just like in any organization, the person in charge should be accountable for the stuff in their collective, in their possession. So,
Sure.
If you have 10 people working in your office and there's 10 computers and 10 desks, if a desk goes missing, well, obviously you should report that right away, because if,
Right.
it's your responsibility, right? So how do we create, we should create language that basically says, that the supervisor needs to take inventory if no one else is doing it, and that way they can report things missing when they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be definitely open to that kind of language. I mean, I say the department head because I figure, well, anybody working under the department head, they would, decide how they're going to delegate that. But I kind of put the buck stops with the department head to report it with the incident report. Number one, I want to make sure there's incident reports even happening. And then number two is that, the council and the mayor's being notified of these things, because all of a sudden something for $5,000 goes missing, and now, or damaged or whatever, and then we're getting a request maybe the next year, and it's long forgotten. And hey, can I get? No, we're self-insured.
Well, we did find out we have some insurance for some of it.
We do.
Yes, because I made the statement that we were self-insured, and I was corrected. And they said, no, we have insurance for some of these things.
Oh, if some of the employees are bonded, yeah, we would.
No, but it was for some items too. Certain items we have insurance. It was some kind of insurance that I was not aware that we had.
Oh, okay.
I just, if I may, for me, I feel like this is a good order with regards to like just making, like Cocaine said and Councilor Jordan had mentioned, with regards to inventory and keeping track of stuff and losing it. I think the only concern I have is like how frequent would it be reported to us? Like, would it be quarterly? Would it be?
This was once a month.
Okay, once a month. Perfect.
That's
And
the way I
via
put it,
email or like presenting to us at the
I
council.
was thinking that they would be a communication to the
Right,
city council.
communication to the
Yeah, so
council.
it'd be on your agenda and you'd get the incident report.
Because I mean, 250 is fine with me. Just because I know that when I was a commissioner at Parks and Rec, like there was equipment that always ended up somehow broken, missing, or something, and we had to replace it. And it's like, eventually that 250 becomes 500, then 750, then
Exactly.
1,000, and after 3 years in, it's a whole nother.
Yep.
Counselor Maldonado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what I just want to think with this is we just had a lot of, I'm in agreement with it because it's just reporting and making sure that we're taking account for stuff that the city pays for and whatnot. But I think we also should think is, we just had a whole meeting on like understaffed and like what different roles, like I know, and you just said Councilor Jordan just said possibly delegating it to, like, it doesn't have to come from the department head, but I just want us to really take that into consideration. I don't expect this to be a huge time consuming thing, but I think I think a challenge that I want to give us as the ordinance committee is like if we're giving, I forgot what job I had that someone said it was like if we were giving an extra task, what 2 tasks can we take away? And I don't know what that is, but I just want us to be mindful of that. Like we just had I'm sure the building commissioner may have a whole bunch of things that may be damaged and whatnot, but we're also asking him to do what we asked him to do in the last order. So I just want us to really think about that.
No, it's a very fair point. And the thing that I think we need to do is like here we have a solution to this type of situation, which is we need to use some of this impact money to hire, or they give them the extra staff, right? This one here, hopefully, what I would see is we would look at these reports. Hopefully there's not too many, because then we have a bigger problem. But if there is a lot of these, we're going to do root cause analysis and see, well, gee, why does, I don't know, I'm just saying, police department they lost $32,000 worth of stuff last year. Why? You know? Well, yeah, where did an $800 bicycle go? I'm not saying any of that happened. I'm just using that as an illustration. Or somebody, crashed a car and we had no insurance for that, or somebody took something, and like, what are they doing to address these things? And that, so the hope would be to reduce the losses.
Right, and I just want to chime in on the amount of work. Right now, in every department, there should be an incident report, policy, process, and form. That's just standard operating business in any business, healthcare,
True.
government, whatever. You lose something, you break something, you file an incident report. So I don't think we're adding work. I think we're just adding a reporting function of what should already be happening.
That's a good point.
And if they're not doing it, well, they should be. And we don't have enough help only goes so far. And as somebody who worked through COVID the whole time in healthcare, I don't know, I have a hard time sometimes hearing it. Because it's sort of like some of the department heads, I get the sense that they really go hands-on when they're short, the people working under them. They go and help the people, right? And get in the field. And other department heads just kind of stay back and look for the people, and to me, the people that have the good teams are the people that jump in and help when the team is short, right? And so it's been a rough 2 years, and I understand it and I get it, but I really don't think we can be saying to the taxpayers who didn't get to say, hey, I'm short, I'm not going to pay my taxes, that we're short, we can't do our jobs, right? I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I'll be quiet.
But if there's a lot of losses in a certain area, the answer though might be you need more resources, or you need people, or how are we deploying the troops?
I do have one question to the maker of the order, because when I saw this order, it reminded me of another order you have put in with, I think, with Councilor Rivera around like, oh my God, we pass it all the time. Police department, loss, what's the word? Damages? Oh my God.
Oh.
What's the line item that we?
Injured on duty.
Injured on duty.
Yes.
Oh yeah, this isn't about that.
So yes, but honestly, like it made me think. When I first saw this, I thought this was gonna be paired up with that, in a way, because it's injured on duty. That's a loss. You're doubling up the payment for this individual. So
that's right.
I just wanted to say that when I saw this, I was part of the excitement for me was thinking that was actually also going to be part of this. But
I think it might be good, because at each meeting now when those are coming up, I ask, why is that same person still on there?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know who it is, but why has that person been on there for months?
Yeah.
And we haven't gotten an answer. Now, there are some confidentiality matters, I imagine, but from a process point of view,
is it possible?
Nobody's supposed to be on that for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, for sure.
As a rule, and you could see, and you hear Councilor McGivern usually talk about it being short-term.
Yeah.
So it's a fair question.
It's a great point you're making, and I hope to capture that with the other colleagues on the labor losses, to your point.
Yep.
which are considerable in the other venue and finance, but this is speaking to property losses.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is the committee comfortable with this, to move it?
Yeah, I'd like to refer it to the law department if that's okay with everyone, and ask them to draw it up in the legal form.
And come back here?
And send, yeah, we could have them send it back here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
for the September meeting.
Is
Does
that a
sound good?
motion?
Yeah, that's a motion,
Is
yep.
there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
So Attorney Degnan, we're just asking you for legal form for September 27th?
Yes,
Thanks for, yeah.
you're welcome.
All right.
Motion to take up items 16 and
And 17.
17 together as a package.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Item 16, ordered resident on 326 Elm Street would like handicap sign on the side of the house removed as it is no longer needed. Item 17, and I was informed by Jeffrey, we already passed this. Order that the handicap sign be removed from 402 Pleasant Street, but apparently they just hadn't taken the sign down yet.
So I guess I can make a motion to withdraw item 17.
Well, or we can say complied with, did they finally take the sign down?
They didn't, but if Chris Baker is aware, because it's already,
So we
it's
can
already
say,
on a list over there to
there's a
be done.
bird in here. Or a
dear.
bat.
Sure, it's a bird or a
bat.
bat. I knew it. I was gonna
Oh, it
say
is
that.
a bat.
I was gonna say.
I
you
thought
sure
it was
it's a
just
bird?
us
It could be a
going
bat.
batty.
Yo,
All right, well, let's hurry up.
Okay.
Let's hurry up. He
Okay.
won't hit you, they have radar.
We could have a workplace injury right here.
They got red.
We're gonna lose 5 city councilors from a bat bite.
All right, all right, all right.
Oh my
Injured on
God.
duty.
Seriously.
what is
That's a first. I have never seen
All right,
that.
so
That's
item
right.
16, motion to approve. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 17.
How to clear out the ordinance committee.
Motion that it's been complied with.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Bye.
Good night.
Y'all. Y'all.